We'll now call this City Council meeting of June 14th to order. We're going to go ahead and start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm going to ask Captain Williams if he'd come on down and lead us in the pledge.
Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, if you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Captain. Jennifer, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Avila.
Here.
Councilmember Beaver.
Here.
Councilmember Thorpe.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Duncan.
Here.
Mayor Bogue.
Here. So we do have a couple of special presentations. We have one honoring past council member and Mayor Dick Riddell, and then we also have a few Youth Advisory Committee recognitions. So come on down.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to present this resolution on behalf of Senator Choa Bogue tonight to the Honorable Dick Riddell for his many years of distinguished service to his community and his country. If the Mayor would permit, I can read the resolution.
Please do.
Whereas the Honorable Dick Riddell is completing, or by now has completed, his 7th term on the Yucaipa City Council following 25 years of dedicated and responsible service, and it is appropriate at this time to highlight his numerous achievements and extend to him special recognition and commendations for his many fine public accomplishments. And whereas originally elected to the City Council on June 6, 1995, Dick Riddell won re-election in 1996, 2000, 2004, 2008, 2012, and 2016. He was selected by his fellow City Council members to serve as mayor of Yucaipa from 1996 to 2008, and again from 2016 to 2017. And whereas throughout his years on the City Council, the Honorable Dick Riddell has held membership with numerous committees, commissions, and agencies, including the Economic Development Advisory, Finance, Fire Service Ad Hoc, and 5 Winds Ranch Advisory Committees, the Omnitrans Board of Directors and its Planning Committee, the San Bernardino Association of Governments Board of Directors, and its Major Projects and Plans and Programs Committees, the San Bernardino County Flood Control Advisory Commission, and the Yucaipa Redevelopment Agency. And whereas from his first day on the City Council, the Honorable Riddell played a key role in construction of the Yucaipa Community Park and its outdoor amphitheater, a new city hall, a new fire station, and the state-of-the-art Yucaipa Police Station. And whereas dedicated to the best interests of Yucaipa and to creating a sustainable, fiscally responsible, and well-planned community, Dick Riddell facilitated many vital projects, including the Oak-Glen Road and Interstate 10 Interchange, and the project advancement agreement that enabled the project to be completed years ahead of schedule. And as a longtime advocate of transportation, planning, and efficient public transit, he contributed to the planning, design, and construction of the Yucaipa Transit Center. And whereas a veteran of the United States Navy Armed Guard who served during World War II, the Honorable Dick Riddell has been a member of the American Legion and Veterans of Foreign Wars, along with numerous other community organizations, including the California Oak Foundation, Crafton Hills Open Space Conservancy, Garden of Angels Advisory Board, Knights of Columbus, and Yucaipa Historical Society. And he has served as a Little League baseball manager and school volunteer. And whereas as a result of his tireless hard work and unwavering commitment, Dick Riddell has compiled an impressive record of personal and civic achievements, a record that has earned him the admiration and respect of those persons who have had the privilege of associating with him. Now therefore be it resolved by Senator Roslicie Ochoa Bogue, and on her behalf, that the Honorable Dick Riddell be commended for his long and distinguished record of leadership as a member of the Yucaipa City Council, applauded for his exemplary public achievements, and extended sincere best wishes for continued success in the future. Thank you.
To be recognized. And I think most of it was covered by the resolutions, but in addition to all the plant facilities and everything we've done, I've been involved with the city since incorporation. 25 and a half years, as it was mentioned, on the council, and prior to that, on the planning commission. One of the things that wasn't mentioned, you know, when we first started, the city had absolutely nothing. In addition to all these plant facilities, the community center, the city hall, the police station, the fire station, and performing arts center, and all that, we had nothing. Our streets were in disrepair. He mentioned the 2 interchanges that we built. Oakland Road wasn't in existence from the freeway up to Yucaipa Boulevard. It only went from Yucaipa Boulevard on to Oakland. And same with Wildwood Canyon Road. It didn't go to the freeway. It used to be Avenue F, and it ended over, terminated over in Dunlap. When it rained, the city was landlocked. We didn't have any water crossings, and all the channels were full. And so it was, the city was virtually landlocked. Since then, we've built 14 bridges and interchanges, bridges and box culverts. And we've accomplished a lot in the field of recreation and for services for seniors and other people. For instance, in recreation, Little League used to play their ball games behind Yucaipa Elementary School on Yucaipa on California Boulevard, which is now a charter school. They used to play there. But look at the facilities we have now. We have Bryant, Glen. We have that beautiful park up on 13th Street. We've added some city parks, and we've refurbished the existing ones. The community park, we bought that. That wasn't in existence. And all these small parks like are up in Chapman Heights and some of the scattered throughout the city. We bought those and we upgraded all our parks. And it's been a pleasure to be a part of this. And I know the council, we have a good council now. You'll continue on, so the city will continue to prosper. We accomplished all these things without going in debt, and we never borrowed money to pay for them. It's all been paid for. We did get many grants from the government and other places, every place we could get them, but all the facilities and everything are paid for. So we have an excellent police and fire protection. And one of the things, we always ensured that we had an excellent city staff. We have an excellent city staff. We've had 2 really excellent city managers, John Tooker and Ray Casey. If you look at other cities, the ones that struggle, they're changing city managers all the time. We've had 2 city managers in 30 years. And fortunately, we have excellent ones. And they've surrounded themselves with excellent staffs. And so we're in good shape. I know this council will continue to keep it that way. It's a wonderful place to live. The city is prospering, but it retained its charm. And I'm just happy and thankful to have been a part of it. And I appreciate this recognition. And I want to thank the council. I want to thank the staff. I want to thank Rose Bogue, and I'm just grateful. So thank you very much.
We're going to go ahead and have our picture taken.
Nice to see you guys. Hi. Congratulations, and you're doing a good job. You too.
You guys want to stay down over there?
You guys, thank you. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. It is my pleasure to join you this evening to recognize 3 of our Youth Advisory Committee members. Each has provided leadership and has actively participated on the committee during their terms spanning from 2 to 4 years respectively. When the Youth Advisory Committee resumed meetings in September of 2020, Allison Shearer, Angela Fan, and Catherine Carrizosa were our only remaining committee members. Each volunteered for a position that would enable their skills while working together to recruit for the remaining 10 vacant positions. Allison was selected as chairperson, Angela as vice chairperson, and Catherine as secretary. Over the course of the past 9 months, we have filled 7 of the 10 vacant positions, and we are proud to have done so with their leadership and support. More so, each of these outstanding committee members has volunteered at our city special events, maintained high grade point averages, and has held employment and/or participated in extracurricular activities. It is my honor to recognize Allison, Angela, Catherine for their terms and dedication to the teens of Yucaipa. We are confident they will achieve their personal, academic, and professional goals in the future. As recent Yucaipa High School graduates as of last week, we wish the committee members the best of luck. Thank you, Allison, Angela, and Catherine, for building the committee and providing leadership that will last within the Yucaipa Youth Advisory Committee for years to come. And at this time, I invite Mr. Sidney to rejoin me, and we'll proceed with the presentation.
Thank you again, Mayor and City Council members, for granting me another opportunity to commend and highlight the achievements of our graduating high school seniors on the Youth Advisory Committee. I'd like to recognize them for their dedication to leadership, service learning, and their commitment to the well-being of our community here in Yucaipa. Their drive to positively impact their generation and serve as an example to their peers deserves our highest praise and commendation. With that, thank you very much. I have 3 certificates. For Catherine and Angela and Allison. Thank you. And if you take another picture.
You still have one more event, right?
Yes.
Say yes. Great presentations. Ray, are there any changes to the agenda we need to be aware of?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. There are changes being distributed, have been distributed to City Council and also in the back of the room for the public's benefit. Cleanup item on number 5, staff report, and then a change to the date on item number 11. Council may still wish to approve those as part of the consent calendar if you so choose, but minor changes to those two, the date on 11 and cleanup on number 5.
All right, so both of those are on consent, the consent agenda. Are there any items that,
Sorry, you do have one public comment?
oh, I am sorry, you are correct. I do have one public comment. Bill Tilbury? So public comment is limited to 3 minutes, and if you could state your name and perhaps where you live.
Okay, I'm Bill Tilbury, and I live at 11773 Peachtree Circle. This is regarding the farmer's market, and it's short and sweet. We can't have those blinds going up on a Friday on the farmer's market. It kills it. We need the visibility. We need people to see that it's up, that we have the market going on. I've worked with farmers markets for, well, now it's going on about 10 years, over in San Dimas, now here in Yucaipa, and I know how vital that is to have the visibility. I know, Mr. Mayor, that you were all excited about it. I thought it was great when you went ahead and pushed it through, and Bobby, I've seen you over there supporting it. I appreciate that. And I'm sure the rest of you have been down there at one point in time or another to check it out, but they're fragile and they really need support. And something like this can really kill it. So I implore you that this next week, that we don't put up those blinds until Saturday morning and let us be able to expose the market to the public. So we do have a better market, because we will lose vendors. In fact, I'm afraid we already have. And when they see it's going to be at least another week or two, they're not going to stand. They're not going to stay, because they've got to make money. They've got families to feed too. And if we don't support them, they're going to go someplace else. So it's basically all I needed to say, and I appreciate your ear, and I ask for your support on that.
All right, thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Thanks for the information.
Okay.
All right, so that takes us back to the consent agenda. Are there any items one wishes to remove from consent?
I'd like to remove item 4 for discussion. It's short discussion.
Okay. So the remaining items on consent, 1 through 15, we will remove item number 4.
I'll move approval.
All right, so we have a motion,
I'll second.
motion and a second.
Mr. Mayor, just to clarify, I think the intent is probably as amended, as stated by the city manager, but if we could just make sure that that's clear in the motion.
I didn't hear a word that you said.
There was an amendment for items number 5 and 11. They were just cleanup items.
Right.
Is that in your motion?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you.
Is that okay with your
Yes, sir.
second? All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, so that takes us to item number 4.
I have a question. Are we going to separate the pandemic from the El Dorado fire? I mean, clearly, we're in the dry spell of the state. The state's talking about having a drought. There's not going to be any water running off that hill for a while. But are we going to continue to call it the pandemic and the El Dorado fire? Or are we going to separate that out? Because in theory, things are changing tomorrow, and I hope they change for the better, but I don't know what it's going to look like.
Yeah, so a couple of answers. One, they are independent, they are separate, like you said. They have continued to be on the same agenda, just out of convenience. But the reasons why the pandemic, COVID-19 declaration are continuing, the staff's recommending that the emergency declaration relative to that continue are, I guess, three reasons. One, that as it stands today, there are still some restaurants that are taking advantage of the outdoor dining through the temporary use permit process that's made available as a result of the emergency declaration. Two, we have a church that is also operating under a temporary use permit that was made available under the emergency declaration. And three, we have yet to complete the Phase 2 improvements that are NRCS funded for mitigation relative to the fire, the flood mitigation and mudslide mitigation relative to the fire. And just point of clarification on that, when we went through this process in 2008, 2009, after the fires and subsequent rainfall events then, the funding that we received to put up K-rail, required that we keep that K-rail up for 5 years. And so the thought is that year after year, at least for 4 or 5 years, the vegetation isn't fully reestablished, and you may have continuing events. And so I would expect that we would keep some of those measures in place for some time. With respect to the other emergency declaration, well, I guess I've covered them both. El Dorado fire was the mitigation relative to NRCS funding, and the pandemic is relative to those three issues.
How soon are we going to cancel out that outdoor seating, the church and all that? How soon? We're not going to live like this forever, are we?
So part of the staff report was a confirmation that we'll be sending out notices to those that are taking advantage of the outdoor dining in their parking lots. They can continue to do that under a modified CUP process if they'd like to, and also for the church that's acting under the TUP. And so we're giving them some time. We want to make sure that we're being business friendly and friendly to the church in their efforts to actually modify their CUP or ask for a new CUP in the case of the church. So we're trying to give them a heads up that this can't go on forever, as you said. It's probably at most a couple of months out on the pandemic in order to give them some time to make those adjustments or make that CUP application.
Okay, thank you.
Has city staff engaged in dialogue with the church? Have they been receptive
have.
to? Yes?
Yes,
Okay.
there have been a series of, there was a time period where we were having a little trouble getting a response. I think they switched some of their consultant staff or their folks that were interacting with our staff. But the last couple of weeks, they've been very responsive, met with Ben Matlock and are moving forward with their CUP.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So we do need to move item number 4.
I move that we approve item number 4 on the consent agenda.
I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, so that's going to take us to council member business reports. Before we get into the department reports, is there anything one would like to add? David?
Nothing, sir.
I just wanted to throw it out there that I know most of you guys know that we did lose an officer. It wasn't one of the Yucaipa station officers, but he was a resident of Yucaipa. In fact, he's very close to our captain. And sometimes it takes tragedy to put life back into perspective. And I hope we keep your prayers for Captain Williams and his family. Sorry, tough times. But like I said, tragedy always seems to bring perspective back to life, and we just need to remember why we're here and continue forward and keep trying to make our city a better place. Thanks. All right, so with that, we're going to move to item number 16, which are the community activity grant in-kind requests, and I believe this is Jennifer.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The city has received 4 in-kind applications for the upcoming fiscal year 21-22 CAG grant cycle. The total in-kind amount requested is $7,817. If all 4 applications are approved, a balance of $18,055 will be available for other in-kind applications that you receive in the next fiscal year. The recommendation is that you review and consider the 5 recommendations listed in the staff report before you this evening. That's all I have.
Right,
Other
so
than
th-
there is one public comment.
There's what?
There is a public comment on this item.
Yes. I'll go ahead and call them up. Is it Zuli Martinez?
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Zuli Martinez, representing Yucaipa Valley Art Association. We just would like again to thank you for the in-kind support for the Spring Art Show 2022, and this is an event that allows us to invite the public, our members, Crafton Hills and Yucaipa High School students to display their art and photography in a public setting. And of course, we also invite city members to attend this event. So again, we want to thank you for continued support on behalf of the Yucaipa Art Association.
Thank you, Zuli. All right, so are there any questions for staff in regards to item number 16?
I've got a couple. When we do the in-kind donations, do we reduce them by the amount they're asking like we do the financial grants?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry, reduce the total, or we reduce the amount of years that they can apply for an in-kind grant?
How about both?
We reduce the total that council has allocated, as stated in the staff report. If you grant these 4 grants, the amount remaining is around $18,000, but we do not restrict them for future grant cycles. And that would be something that we could note for next fiscal years, 22-23, as part of the guidelines, if you would like us to.
Okay, thank you. And then on one of our applicants, let me see if I can get down to it here. It's the art festival, I believe. They were not allowed to utilize the facility based on their request before. Disregard. I've answered my own question. Never mind.
All right, any other questions for staff?
I just want to ask, just to be clear, with the, and I've already lost my spot here, one of the applicants who really doesn't, we have to get an exemption for, it looks like there's only 11 members out of the 66 members that are being served, and that there's probably 43, 45 people between Redlands and Highland that are being served, with a couple one from Rancho Cucamonga, one from Fontana, and 2 from Banning. I have a little bit of heartburn. I don't feel we should support that, since 11 out of 66 represents such a small fraction. Had there been maybe at least 1/3, I think that might have been a viable number, but I can't support that as an exemption. So just for the record, I'm not going to approve that. I will not vote yes.
Jennifer, did we give them an exemption before? I know I've seen this application in the past.
You're talking Al-Anon?
Yes.
Yeah, for the current fiscal year we're in, which was 2021, they brought it to us toward the end of this grant cycle right now, and we did award that grant. However, based on council member discussion when they applied for the 21-22 grant cycle, we did ask them to provide information on how many residents that they were serving. Obviously, Al-Anon is a national organization. I think their main address is out of Colton, but they service the area. And it's completely up to you as city council if you want to grant them this request.
I'm okay. Hang on one minute. Okay. I'm okay with going ahead on this cycle, but then maybe in the future we'll get more information. I don't know what the rest of the council feels.
We had a conversation about this last meeting, the meeting before, about, I asked what this was all about, and it was about Alcoholics Anonymous supporting the families or something like that, or Alcoholics Anonymous. It's associated with that, right?
It's probably their monthly meetings or their meetings for people who want to go for their support. They're all over,
Right.
America. But the cycle that they did before was for the grant that's ending June 30th. This is starting July 1 forward to use the facility for their ongoing meetings.
So the problem that you have, David, or the heartburn that you have is because not the majority of them are in Yucaipa?
Correct. There's 11 out of 66 and 43 between Highland and, what was the other community? Redlands. I think they should try for Redlands or Highland and not just Yucaipa. It's not a matter of being centrally located. I think it's just a matter of pragmatism, is that we have to start drawing a line somewhere, because next year might only be 5 people, and they're going to want to apply again, when obviously most of the service is not our citizens, it's somebody else's communities. Like I said, Redlands or Highland. I think they should try for them, since they're the bulk of the people that they're serving.
Well, I can agree with what we were saying, but I'm thinking perhaps maybe the following year. We've come this far with it at this point, so I agree with what you're saying, and then they'll know that they need to try a different city and rotate where they hold their meetings.
That would be an excellent idea. You should start rotating it then, not just rely on our benevolence. I mean, we're a soft touch. I mean, this city council has a reputation of doing that type of stuff. And I'm not against Al-Anon. I'm not against any of this stuff by any means. But I do think that we need to draw a line somewhere. And I wish the best of everybody who makes an application. But the reality is that we're not the bulk of the people they're serving. It's other communities.
And I think I agree with that. I think we should go ahead and approve it this time, and then obviously a lot has been said here and it's recorded and everyone heard it. So I think next time maybe we don't approve it, so. But this time I think we should approve it.
I concur. Justin, you have something?
I think also should it prove that Al-Anon has also sought grant funding from other cities, perhaps they include that information in future applications, or whether they have or have not. So for those who are in the auditorium, take note of that, please. If next time you submit this application and you have received financial grant funding or monies from other cities, please include that for our consideration.
All right, so just by hearing where we're headed here, I think maybe we're going to break this down. We have items 1 through 5. I'm going to take items 2, 3, and 4 first. Is there a motion that we approve items 2, 3, and 4?
I'll move.
I'll second. Go ahead.
I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, with that, so we have items 1 and 5, which are directly related to Al-Anon. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve items or sub-items 1 and 5 based on the conversation that we've had or the discussion we've had, where this year we approve it, but next time if they come before us, we have some verification that the group has changed as far as the dynamics before we approve it. Did I say that right?
Is that good enough for a second?
When you say change, you mean their membership makeup?
The combination of 11 to whatever 33 or whatever it was, that it changed the makeup of that service, or that they make some effort to get funding from other cities around us.
I will second that motion.
All right, so we do have a motion and a second for items 1 and 5. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed?
No.
All right, so that's 4-1. Okay, so that's going to take us to item number 17. And I believe this is Jennifer.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This item before you this evening is the Mobile Home Rent Review Commission stipend. To address the difficulty in finding, filling, and maintaining 5 commission positions with qualified candidates, the resolution before you establishes a stipend for the commission. The goal of implementing a stipend is to provide somewhat an incentive to encourage citizens of Yucaipa to serve on the commission. The draft resolution proposes a stipend of $75 per meeting attended, up to a maximum of 2 meetings per month. The commission would be paid for meetings that address major changes limited to the following, which would be the biennial review, rent adjustments by application to the commission, and appeal of the rent administrator's decision of a capital improvement, and adoption of resolutions in connection with any of these matters. The city has reposted and advertised the 2 vacancies on the commission, and to date, we still have not received any 2 applicants to fill the 2 vacancies that exist. I did include in the staff report, we did do a poll of some cities. In addition, we reviewed information that is listed on the mobile home park owner's allegiance. And I would like to correct an item in the staff report. When we were originally looking at this, we came across documents that showed that Oceanside did pay $35 for their mobile home commission. However, we did reconfirm today that that is not the case. So on the list on 195 of the packet, only 1 city, Carson, pays a stipend to their commission members that deal with mobile home park type items. I'd like to say that each city is very different on how they use their stabilization program. But the one consistent theme through all discussions with these cities is that they also have vacancies. Kalamasa, they have 5 vacancies. The ones that have at-large positions, they have vacancies. So it doesn't appear that it's just a Yucaipa issue. It appears to be an issue in maybe the state of California. And I'd like to also say there are so many more cities on the list that have some type of rent control provisions in their communities. However, a lot of cities still are not open to the public. They're answering only phone calls and sometimes emails. So we gathered a quick snapshot before you for this item. This choosing of $75, the cities that do have stipends are generally maybe more toward the planning commissions versus mobile home, housing, or other type of commissions. And in discussions, it seemed like, would it be an incentive enough to list it at 35? We thought maybe 75 would be more attractive. However, that number can be changed if council's uncomfortable with the number of staff listed in the resolution. There is no guarantee that a stipend will encourage someone, but it's an attempt to fulfill the direction that staff was given. That's all I have at this time.
All right, so are there any questions for staff?
How many vacancies do we currently have, ma'am?
2, and they're council appointed.
Okay. I had suggested when this first came before us that we rotate in maybe members of the planning commission as needed. It's not something you are seated on permanently or annually. And I think the statement that I received from staff was it would be impractical considering the large amount of legal language and knowledge of statutes needed of a commissioner. And I accepted that, but as I've thought on it for the last several weeks, I'm not entirely sure I agree, considering jurors in criminal hearings have zero knowledge of the law. They're explained the statutes, and they make a decision based on that from somebody who is versed in the law. So with that, I'm not entirely, and also in response to some of the public comment received, I'm not convinced this is altogether necessary. I think there might be another workaround. I believe that we should entertain the idea of working in language to the planning commission or some other commission where they sit as needed. The specific statutes as they relate to that hearing are explained to them, just the same they would as a judge explains jury instructions to a jury who are altogether ignorant on the laws that are currently being decided, and they make a decision based on that. So at that point, I'm gonna have to shy away from this stipend at this point until we can have more information as to the necessity.
Jennifer, go ahead.
Can I make comment? I'm sorry, I did fail to mention, I did have a very lengthy discussion with City of San Jose today. They also have several mobile home parks in their community. I know council at one time, through that the study session we had, in reviewing a lot of other cities, they're also using hearing officers. And we threw out a number of like around $700 based on an old information. City of San Jose did an RFP, and they have 3 attorneys on as a rotation if needed. That serves as the body that listens to the applicant and the residents, depending on who's bringing it in. It's not to say that a planning commission or another body couldn't do it. The rotation is somewhat concerning because the difference between our commission and a jury is the commission has to choose amongst the experts presented in the application itself. If the park owner's bringing in the application, they have their expert team. The city has an expert team, and the residents bring the experts. The commission has to choose what expert they're determining their findings on, and then they have to state, based on the law and our resolution and ordinance, how they're coming to that finding. They can't just say we agree or disagree. They have to cite findings for the resolution and that's crafted by the attorney. So it is a little more extensive, I'd say, than a typical jury that we're all called into.
Crafted by whose attorney? When you say they have to make the
The
decision?
commission has an attorney. And they then give that attorney the direction based on the expert testimony received on the findings that establish the amount granted through the application.
This process is appealable as well. So-
It's appealed then to city council, and city council is only able to see the document of record. You can't take new information in. You read the verbatim transcripts that's done by a court recorder, and you're limited to the expert that had been reviewed by the commission. And then if that decision is appealed, then it goes to court. And all these costs at the end can be recaptured and charged back to the residents through this process. So it's been our attempt to do our best to limit the time the hearing takes in order to reduce the amount of costs that could be subject by the residents that live in that park.
Jennifer, in the past number of years, have we ever had a full commission? Has there always been a vacancy? I don't recall there ever being a full commission.
We've had a full commission.
We've had full commissions, but we've also had commissioners that weren't able to attend a hearing. So, we're a seat shy. And I think since 2006 to current, we've been bringing this item to council for consideration due to issues of getting commissioners willing to serve on the commission that can sit up there and handle a hearing type of environment. And it has changed significantly since when we became a city. I mean, starting in 04, 05, 06, before they never had experts come. It was just a park owner and a resident and the residents that came in. Now there's attorneys, there's experts. It's a different process now.
If I recall, we were looking at this stipend as more as on a trial basis. So my recommendation would be that we put this out there for 3 months. If there is interest, if it helps, then there's nothing to review. But if it doesn't do anything and we're still in the same problem, then we need to review this and take a different approach. So just use this stipend as a trial period for 3 months. Is that possible?
I'm not sure 3 months is long enough. Do you think 3 months is long enough?
It's 90 days.
Okay.
Well, I know that we have some MNOI reviews coming soon, maybe?
Right now, I have nothing, which is fantastic, but don't say that out loud.
I was just,
I have, I,
three
right now,
months, 3 months popped in my head. I thought that would be a good review time just to look at it. And if we can't fill these vacancies, I think we need to reassess. That was my proposal.
I would just amend it with an expiration date of 3 months, the resolution. The ordinance.
I just want to put it in, the stipend in for 3 months, and then, in 3 months, we revisit the situation to see if the vacancies are filled, and if not, then we need to try something different.
So the advice would be to adopt the resolution, and I'll return in 3 months, and then
Correct.
you can rescind it if we're not seeing any traction on,
Reevaluate the entire process.
and return to council in 3 months then.
Is that okay?
So, may I?
Yes, please. Go ahead.
So, as far as the ordinance that we have, the mobile home rent control ordinance, we have the largest, 19 pages. I've been dealing with this for a long time. I think the closest one to it is 5 pages, and I forget what city it was. But it is a very important part of our housing element as far as our affordable housing. We've got 41 parks, 4,000 and some odd spaces. I think we have to do something to either continue having a commission by paying a stipend and see if it works, or we have to just let the council make these decisions. And I don't agree with some of these letters that it's that complicated. If you can read and you can reason, you can see what's going on. You know, the park owners can afford, $400 an hour attorneys, and we've got people setting up here that are not making near that. So I just think it's a disadvantage if we don't stand up for our ordinance. I mean, we've got, $200,000 a year as a line item in our budget to defend the ordinance? Is that still correct?
No, the professional service is $71,000 annually that we budget. However, we had a case this past year, and we had to, it went over 2 different fiscal years, and it went above 200,000, yes.
When I got elected, I was told point blank that there was $200,000 line item in the budget to defend the rent ordinance because we'd lost so much money based on being sued or countersued or appealing and whatever.
Well,
So I
probably
think it's
over time, based on cases, yes.
So I think it's a very, very important part of our element. I attended the YMRA meeting on Saturday, and they're very concerned about their future, and they're concerned about whether this council, whether this staff is going to support them going forward. Because when you're making $900 a month and you're paying $350 in rent, and then some wealthy park owner wants to buy it and raise the rent $200, that literally puts a poor widow out of a house. And I don't want to endorse that at all. I don't want to be a part of that. So I suggest 3 months is fine, $75. I think it should be more myself, but it is what it is.
Well, the option I had mentioned before in other cases are hearing officers, and they do, a lot of other cities use them, and I think the better range is more around $250, $300 an hour to make a ruling on the case. And they would not only know our ordinance and resolution, they would also know the law, which makes it very difficult to appeal to council, which ultimately then reduces the cost back to the residents.
Again, I'm not opposed to the council just taking this over, and they just appear before us and let us figure it out.
Well, that could be something we review after the 3 months.
I agree.
So did we have a motion? Did someone make a motion on?
I make a motion, we do what Mayor Boak said.
Well, I don't know. The mayor doesn't normally make that motion, so.
No, I make a motion that we go ahead and approve the stipend for 3 months and then see if we get any reaction or any response from the community to step up and serve on the rent commission. And if not, then we bring it back to council and reevaluate it and decide where we go from there.
I'll second.
Is that about right?
That was a really long motion,
It was, yeah, I'm sorry.
but understood. So we have a motion, and John, did you second?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
No.
All right, so 4-1. Okay, so that takes us to possible action on pending legislation. Ray, do you have anything?
I have nothing to report on this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. It's always a danger when the legislature is in session, so beware. All right, so that takes us to department reports. Item number 18. Jennifer, I think you're taking over.
My night. Special tax for Yucaipa paramedic program. The city assumed responsibility for the provision of fire and protection and paramedic services in 1999-2000. The program is entirely funded by revenues generated from property taxes. In 2004, voters approved Measure Y to address the escalation of costs associated with the program. However, the measure did not include an escalation clause. The escalation clause was specifically left out by the measure due to feedback received from the paramedic assessment survey that was conducted in 2003, which indicated that residents would not vote favorably for a ballot measure that included a CPI escalator. In fiscal year 15-16, represented the first year in which the revenues generated from the tax were not sufficient to cover the annual expenses for the paramedic program. The paramedic services accumulated fund balance was used to cover the annual deficit until these funds were depleted in 1920. Currently, the annual expense of the program and the general fund balance that is committed to fire services is now covering the budget shortfall. Since the failure of Measure E, staff has been researching alternative cost recovery models. Other local communities have initiated a fee-based program for paramedic services, which was presented at the March 22nd, 2001 council meeting on the goals and objectives process. The intent of the program would be to establish fees in addition to the current special tax. Fees for residents would reflect a percentage of the cost already covered by the tax and would be less than fees charged to non-residents. Fees for non-residents would be based on full cost recovery since they are not subject to the current tax. The goal of the fee-based program is to address the projected annual shortfall. It is estimated the amount of approximately $1,104,500 would be collected through the special assessments for fiscal year 21-22. With the adoption of Resolution 2133 before you, the city's fiscal year 21-22 draft budget includes an estimated expenditure for paramedic services in the amount of $1.9 million approximately. As a result, the paramedic expenditures are budgeted to exceed revenues by $809,000 for 21-22. The recommendation before you is that you adopt resolution number 2133, fixing the special tax for fiscal year 21-22 for the paramedic program, and then direct staff to prepare options pertaining to a paramedic fee program for public safety ad hoc committee review and return to council with a formalized program for final review and approval. Grant Malinowski is also here this evening if you have any questions pertaining to the program.
All right. So are there any questions for staff?
Yes. So adopt resolution number 2021-33. Didn't we say in the past that this was a fixed number that we couldn't change?
It is a fixed number. We do not change it. It's that we need you to adopt the resolution so we can submit it to the county tax assessor's office.
Okay,
It's a
so we can't
requirement.
change this, so that's why we had Measure E and Measure E failed, okay?
So with that, perhaps what we should do is break this into two. The first one is something that just is, I don't know, like habitual or routine. So we're adopting the paramedic tax that we
move
do
that
every year, and then we'll discuss number two.
I move that we approve Section 1 of item number 18.
Second.
All right, so we have a first and a second for item number 1. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, so number 2 is to direct staff to prepare options pertaining to the paramedic fee. So do we want to bring this back at a future meeting? Is that what you're looking for? Is that the direction? If we look this, we want to
You're-
look at a,
We're recommending that you direct the safety committee to meet, and then they would formulate a recommendation that then we would come back to council for final review and approval.
yeah.
I believe that we need to put this on the ballot. I think we need to go just the opposite or modify what we tried before and go for a half-cent sales tax. Public safety only. Right now, our budget has fire and it has our regular budget. I think that we need to try to get a half-cent sales tax. That way, people that visit, if they need a paramedic, they help pay for it. Half-cent sales tax, public safety only, separate fund. I absolutely believe we need to do that, whether it fails or not. The public needs to understand that this is going to cause us grief financially if we don't plug this hole. And before, the consultant and everyone agreed that, you know, we do it the way we did because it only had to have a 50% or 51%. But I think we need to go just the opposite direction, do it the other way, and just see what the public has to say. Because if we explain this properly to the public, there's a lot of people that need a paramedic on that fire engine, and that they've got to be there, in my humble opinion.
I'll second his motion.
So, which was to move this to the Public Safety Committee
Yeah.
or Commission, whatever one. Is that correct, Jennifer? That we're directing staff to move it to the Public Safety
For
Committee,
further discussion, and then a recommendation would be brought back before council.
right? Okay.
Maybe
Justin?
I'm hearing to add to what's in the staff report, to have the Public Safety Committee also discuss the potential for another measure?
That's the motion that
That's- yeah.
Mr. Duncan made.
Okay.
so. Go ahead, Justin.
Or other options, Mr. City
Or other
Manager.
options.
Right. No, if there's a better plan, I'm all over that.
Chief,
Yes, sir.
will CAL FIRE negotiate this cost? I mean, this is kind of high for us.
What, negotiate what cost?
The cost of paramedics. Is this something that can be negotiated in future contracts?
No, I mean, the cost is set for statewide for contracts.
So we get the bill and that's just the bill.
Yep, well, no, we get the quote and then we bill actual. So unlike some other contracted services, we bill actual. So we're under budget several $100,000 every year on staffing costs. So a lot of that is offset by kind of the benefit of contracting with the state, by the state offsetting overtime costs throughout the fire season and stuff like that. And it does benefit the city. So, and then just to clarify, the paramedics, all of our firefighters are paramedics. We don't have any firefighters that are paramedics. So the difference between like paramedic staffing and non-paramedic staffing for the entire budget is about a 7% difference.
Okay.
We utilize those guys as the firefighters as well as they're all paramedic trained.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks, Grant. Oh, John, go ahead.
On our impact fees, does that have any bearing on this? Do we get any funds from impact fees going towards this paramedic cost?
No, the development impact fees can only be used for infrastructure and capital improvements, that they are used for like a fire engine or other types of capital improvements, but not for services. The only option there is a community facilities district. There are cities in the area that use community facilities districts for operational costs, public safety, public works, I think. So that's the only option in terms of operational costs.
All right, thank you.
All right, so we do have a motion and a second on the table, right? Bob, did you make the motion?
Are we making a motion to approve? We're asking for direction on item 2, right? It says,
Yes, so we were going to move it to the Public Safety Committee.
okay, I make a motion that we move item number 2 to the Public Safety Committee.
I think that's what you had, and then David, you had
second.
made that second. Okay, just for clarification. Are you okay, Dave?
Just to make
Clear as
sure
mud,
that,
right?
so there's the recommendation in the staff report to look at a fee program, and then based on the input from the Mayor Pro Tem and Councilmember Avila, that would also be augmented to include looking at a potential for a special tax to be returned to the voters.
Yes. All right, so any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. so that takes us to item number 19, and Jennifer, you're up again.
Thank you. Electronic filing of campaign disclosure statements and statements of economic interest. For several years, the government code has allowed local agencies to mandate online electronic filing for elected officers, candidates, committees, and other persons who are required to file statements, reports, and other documents under the Public Political Reform Act, so long as the filer receives contributions or makes expenditures exceeding $2,000. This has not been our past practice. However, in 2020, AB 2151 was passed, which requires posting of redacted campaign disclosure statements on the city's website within 72 hours of each filing deadline. To ensure compliance with the new legislation, the city recently acquired an online electronic secure filing system, which is called NetFile, that is compatible with both the FPPC and Secretary of State for receiving online filing forms. Transitioning these filings to electronic requires City Council's consideration and approval of the ordinance that's before you this evening. Implementation of NetFile and adoption of this ordinance will promote transparency and make it more convenient for elected officials and other candidates or staff or consultants to complete these documents. In addition, it will provide a more structured and secure process for all filers and create increased efficiencies in the clerk's office. The recommendation before you tonight is that you approve first reading of ordinance as read by staff. Ordinance number 400, and the title is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Yucaipa, California, adding Chapter 1.10 to the Yucaipa Municipal Code relating to electronic filing of Fair Political Practices Commission campaign disclosure statements and statements of economic interest. That's all I have for you.
All right, so are there any questions?
So aren't we doing that now? Right now, aren't these documents online on the city website?
They are online, however, we as staff have to redact them, and if there's sections within those documents that aren't filled out completely, then we're going back and forth with the person filing the statement.
So would we electronically sign these documents?
Yes. You'd fill out, you'd have your own account, and not only does it automatically redact it, in addition, a lot of the other campaign statements, since it is an approved platform for both FPPC and Secretary of State, you don't have to send them an additional copy. We see each other's copy, and then you would have all your statements that you have filed throughout your history. So you can pull information or see what you've done or see changes that you want to make. And in addition, we have on our end, because if someone requests a public information request and wants to see your documents on the admin side, we would, if they request it, we could show them your unredacted here at the city. However, online, it would always be remained as redacted.
All right, you good?
I move approval.
I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, so 5-0. That takes us to item number 20, the grant update for the AVA. Is this Ben or Fermin? Ben.
This will be me. Just wanted to give, I guess, a quick update for council's benefit. As council and the public are aware, the city has been working on the planning vision for the establishment of a wine region within the community, which will also help support the AVA petition that is under review at the federal level. This approach was done through two kind of planning phases, and we are currently in the phase 2 process and working on a master plan for the North Bench area. The most recent study session for the AVA project, which was on May 24th, 2021, council did direct staff to also pursue grant funding opportunities to help get more properties under vine. And so this first opportunity that was made available is through the Department of Conservation Agricultural Conservation Acquisition Grant Program through the Sustainable Agricultural Lands Conservation Program, so the SALT grant. Just for kind of the background, this is kind of the same grant program that's funding the phase 2 project of our AVA process. However, this is a different program underneath that overall grant process. And we required a pre-submittal by June 1st. And so we did, following the May 24th council meeting, did prepare a package for that. The This is to establish a conservation easement for the expansion of the North Cork Winery and Vineyard located directly outside the city limits. The site owned by Melody and Preston Todd will actually be the first vintage of Yucaipa grown estate wine or Yucaipa Valley grown estate wine available for sale. And so the grant proposed would help facilitate the expansion of the vineyard of that site. As part of this application, the city did consult with county staff for support as well. Through the pre-application process, we will be getting feedback from the state, and we'll coordinate with the county for any additional help that is needed, including perhaps a joint formal application for this particular conservation easement. As part of the grant application, staff also did reach out to a number of other property owners who did express interest in the grant. However, they did want to see, one, how the process is for the Todds and how kind of what to expect through that process, and then as well as to see the progress that was made through the Phase 2 project. Conservation staff or the state did express excitement for our projects and notes that they are also happy to provide that technical support for the future grant cycles with those other properties. So as those properties start moving forward with perhaps pursuing conservation easements on those properties, the state staff did say that they would be happy to work with all of us to help kind of prepare those packages. And then kind of in conclusion, the Todds have noted their appreciation and support and collectively are excited for the future to help get more areas under vine in the community. And that concludes my presentation.
All right, so are there any questions for staff?
I have a question. So I'm a little bit confused. Initially, when we started this process, I didn't realize that we were trying to create a vineyard overlay just for the North Bench. I thought that we were going to be, I mean, right now the AVA application includes Cherry Valley, all of Yucaipa, and the North Bench, and Mentone and other areas. But the North Bench, I'm not concerned about just growing grapes on the North Bench. I mean, there's areas down by the freeway corridor, and if someone wanted to grow grapes there and build a commercial winery there, boutique winery there. So I mean, I don't understand why we're just saying North Bench. Help me understand that.
So that was a part of the committee process early on in the review by the committee. Different parts of the community were discussed in terms of focusing the vinification efforts. And one of the suggestions during that process was that it would be preferable to kind of keep the wineries generally together in an area that could create some excitement for that particular area. The freeway corridor specific plan was one of the areas that was considered by the committee, and they gravitated towards the North Bench. It is clearly up to council to what extent you want to expand that location or that boundary, if you will. Certainly there are some areas outside of that more specific focus area in the North Bench that would make some sense for boutique wineries as well. There's also an item on the agenda this evening relative to the freeway corridor specific plan that ultimately we think that there may be some more flexibility provided in the open space designated areas. Number one, we think that there will be an opportunity, and we've talked about this before, to reconcile the hillside ordinance with the freeway corridor specific plan and create perhaps some more developable area. But there's also an opportunity, if council wishes, to take some of that open space area in the freeway corridor specific plan and create vineyards there and create more flexibility and open space designation in the community in general. So that's how the conversation kind of evolved with the committee, but it's certainly up to city council. We know that there are some locations outside of that focused North Bench area that folks are really working on. Mr. Matlock had talked to a couple of gentlemen related to perhaps next year working with us on the grant application, and think that that could be a real viable location. The other two could be very, very viable locations as well. So I think your point is well taken.
Is it possible to include all of Yucaipa, or because the AVA and the growing of grapes, as it relates to the AVA being able to sell those grapes, is it possible to open this up for the whole city as far as being able to grow grapes or build a boutique winery? Because the whole idea is to do a commercial winery on a residential property a place to make wine, maybe a bed and breakfast, whatever the property owner wants to do, right?
Yes.
Okay,
So the answer to the question, the first question, second question is yes. Answer to the first question is some of that conversation focused on concern for commercial uses in certain parts of the community that may not be as compatible with existing residences, as opposed to being able to design the North Bench area, for example, to create that compatibility through whether it's buffering or open space with trails in between or whatever those things are that might help with that compatibility, as opposed to plopping a winery down in the middle of an existing neighborhood without that buffering and other mitigation opportunities. But I do think there are certainly locations in the community that could still be mitigated, if you will, with existing neighborhoods. So I think maybe it's a hybrid. It's a hybrid of a kind of a focused area with potential for other locations in the community through some kind of a, call it a development opportunity reserve like we did with the Uptown at one point, or some other methodology that where council would be able to weigh in on the mitigation requirements for having a boutique winery somewhere in or near an existing neighborhood. Or again, the vineyards themselves can be planted almost anywhere. That's not a problem. It's when you add the the commercial uses to the residential property that it gets just a little more complicated.
And that's what this whole purpose is, right?
Absolutely.
Is adding the commercial aspect to the residential in order to accommodate manufacturing of grapes and all the amenities that come with that.
And the ancillary uses, yes, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So there was discussion at the last meeting that it may not be feasible to have vineyards so close to a large residential development. So I think something needs to be bifurcated as it relates to a commercial overlay in the North Bench. Close that chapter, and then focus on maybe an expanded AVA overlay citywide to determine the best areas of the city to make vineyards and go that route. That's my suggestion. Again, I said this at the last meeting, I'm not entirely convinced. I don't see a way forward on the North Bench with any of this at this point. I've heard discussions from at the public speaker podium that it can't be done having vineyards so close to residential developments. I also have asked for experts to be presented so that I can ask them that question myself, and a true expert. I haven't seen that yet either, but I would like, I think I'm gonna agree with Mayor Pro Tem Duncan that I think the focused, or that we are hyper-focused on the North Bench at this point, and I think we need to, well, I'm gonna say it right now. I'm vexed that the AVAPC hasn't met in so long. I think a lot of that information, I rely on my appointee to that commission to provide me with information. The last time this met, there was two different council members sitting at this dais, and I have yet to, the person who I trust, has lived in Yucaipa for a long time and has their hand on the finger on the heartbeat of the community, has yet to speak with any of these members of this planning commission. So I am still very vexed that it hasn't met in so long. So I would like to see that happen sooner than later.
So if I may, the two questions I think I heard. One is, it's time to have those follow-up committee meetings, and I agree with you 100%, and I think that was a little bit delayed just to come back and kind of go over the history of the Phase 1 process. The other was relative to experts regarding the interaction between the residential land uses and the commercial wineries. Was that the second or the first question, actually? And I would submit that that the PlaceWorks folks at least took their best crack at that discussion in our both our Phase 1 initial review and then the Phase 1 study session. But we can certainly follow up if there's more information that is required on that front.
Thank you.
Anyone over?
No.
David, do you have any? John? This is just a receive and file, so no vote taken. You have anything else? You have something, Bob?
Have we started, what's the status of Phase 2? Are we getting close to that, starting those meetings, or?
Yeah, it will be scheduled for later this month.
Okay.
All right, so that's going to take us to Item 21. Is this Ben or Fermin?
So me again. Just want to, I guess, gather input from council or some direction. As council may know, the Uptown commercial area is located within two different property and business improvement districts, or PBIDs. PBID number 1 is on California Street between Yucaipa Boulevard and Avenue B. PBID number 2 is on Yucaipa Boulevard and Bryant Street and 2nd Street. Purpose of a PBID itself is to provide a funding mechanism for levying assessments on properties that help essentially pay for ongoing monthly utility costs for landscape irrigation, area lighting, and other activities that are specified within the PBID's Property Management Plan, or PMP. For the city of Yucaipa, the PBID's administration has been combined through an MOU between the Yucaipa Village Square Management District, or the two different PBIDs, and the city, with the property owner oversight of the PBIDs completed through the Uptown Association. Initiating documents for the association did reference it was intended to be a nonprofit entity, however, that is no longer the case. Over time, a few different concerns have arisen, with one of the key concerns over the past year relating to potential liability for the board and their recommendations, and so direction was provided at the Uptown Board's August 26, 2020 and October 20th, 2020 meeting to consider potential modifications to that PMP that would allow insurance and legal costs to be a part of the approved budget expenses. This revision was presented to the City Council meeting of December 14th, 2020, where City Council discussed these potential changes, and then also included discussion about possibly disbanding the PBID to help address some of the other overarching concerns. The Uptown Advisory Committee, or some sort of city-based committee related to the Uptown, was considered to also be perhaps established that would gather the feedback and recommendations for city events, but where the PBID kind of financial sides of the PBID landscape and related costs would just be absorbed into the general fund. And then part of this discussion was that the removal of the assessment may help complement other programs the city has done to help small businesses that were struggling through the pandemic. And then following that meeting, council did direct staff to work with the association and gather any necessary feedback that can help inform the next steps on how the association, the city can best meet the community needs. So figuring out exactly what services are necessary for the Uptown to help give them some direction. And so this council direction was provided to the association's board at their December 15th meeting. As part of that discussion, both parties did feel that additional information from the stakeholders was needed, and that a survey should be conducted and followed by a Uptown-related meeting. I would really engage the different stakeholders. The association directed staff to then prepare a survey for their review at the next meeting. So the survey itself is intended to get feedback from the interested stakeholders on elements of Uptown that is both important and beneficial, and really kind of get some ideas on the next steps so that the city and the board can best serve those needs regardless of whether or not the PBID remains or is dissolved. Survey was provided to the board prior to their January meeting, but staff was excluded from that meeting, and to date, no action has occurred on the survey. Based on the needed feedback, as well as some of the timelines that would be necessary should the PBID be disbanded, staff is seeking direction on how to best move forward, given that there hasn't been direction from the Uptown Association yet on a game plan, and so the survey is attached for council's reference as well.
All right, so I do have a couple of speaker slips here, and we'll go ahead and listen to them first before we start asking questions. The first one is Craig Suveg.
Good evening. Craig Suveg, 37296 Ironwood Drive. Gentlemen, there's two sides to every story. You have hopefully read the staff report, the supporting documents. With it, there is a second side. 3 minutes does not permit me enough time to provide that explanation. So for those of you who are interested in the rest of the story, please feel free to reach out to me and I will provide that for you. With reference to the action or inaction of the Uptown Association, since January, we have been in the process of restructuring the Uptown Association. because our status as an association is quite unclear. Some of the best advice we were given was by Councilman Beaver, in that if your status was unclear, to try and make it clear. And we have proceeded along the lines of producing our own set of bylaws, which helps us. One of the things it helps us with is we have the ability now to bring on business owners, and not just property owners to the board. This allows us to deal with people that have a more stake in the venture in the Uptown development. What we have with reference to this issue of dissolution, the current board, back in December, we did vote to do this outreach. We have lost a couple of board members since then out of frustration. We are attempting to bring others on. We have not had a quorum in quite some time, so we cannot vote on issues. We do have a meeting scheduled tomorrow. I've reached out, and we apparently do have enough for a quorum to actually reconsider and, if necessary, revote on this particular agenda item. We only have one board member currently who supports dissolution of the PBID. And it becomes one of authority, whether the city unilaterally can dissolve the PBID, or does that need to be a vote of the Uptown Association? So we'll see how that works out tomorrow at the Uptown Association meeting.
Robert Coleman.
Well, hey, first off, I want to say thank you for volunteering your guys' time here tonight. I know that you guys get a slight stipend just for being here, but this is time away from your families. This is time that you're dedicating to better the community that we live in. And with that, like I said, thank you for that. Regarding this Uptown PBID, Phase 1, I was definitely not a part of when it became brought to the city and incepted. Phase 2, I was heavily involved in as far as bringing it to be. When it first started, there was a meeting, the city went through and the city was in favor of having the PBID Phase 2. They actually required that we go out and get petitions signed by everybody in the area. The city wouldn't even pay for the mailing, the postage on the mailing to go through and have the initial first vote. I paid for that personally out of my pocket to go through and have that sent out to every business or property owner in that district. The list was confirmed by the city hall. That was sent that way. That is how this came to be. As soon as that was voted in favor, the city did help by hiring a consultant to go through and work with put together the ballot, put together the PBID, and send it out for a vote. At that time, it needed a quorum. So since then, when PBID 1 was started, I believe there was a nonprofit started sometime in like 1998. If you look at the Secretary of State filings, somewhere around the time of 2006, that was, or maybe even 2004, it was dissolved from the Secretary of State. PBID number 2 came into effect in 2008. There was no nonprofit there. There wasn't ever, whoever the consultant is that the city hired, maybe they missed that when they did the research, but there was no entity there. Fast forward, 12 years, 13 years, I'm here talking to you guys a year ago, asking what type of organization is it? We need insurance to make sure that the board members are protected. I was told that it's not a city organization, that it is a private organization, and that the city is not there. Well, if that's true for the insurance, and if we had to vote on ourselves as far as the Uptown landowners on bringing it to be, how do you guys have the ability to dissolve it without bringing that vote to the Uptown landowners? I could see you guys pushing a petition and sending it out to them to say, hey, dissolve it. But this was created by the Uptown property owners. And if it's going to be dissolved, it should be dissolved by the Uptown property owners, not you gentlemen sitting up there on the bench. Even though I do have respect for you being there, that's how this came to be. yes, the city and the Uptown Board have had conflict, but right now the Uptown Board has said, look, let us handle our stuff. We'll set our agenda. They're trying to be as independent as they possibly can be. And with that, I'm going to leave this up to you guys in direction to go, but I would highly encourage you to allow, if you're going to move forward with dissolution, you make that something that the Uptown business owners and property owners get to decide. So, thank you.
All right, so we're going to go into questioning. Ray, is this a discussion about dissolution, or is this a discussion about a survey that we're going to put out to see if the residents or the Uptown Business Association wants to dissolve?
So that was the original intent, was the survey was created back in December, submitted to the Uptown Association. The survey included a number of questions to gauge business owner, property owner input about operations in the Uptown Association and city operations. And also included in there is a question that asks whether or not the folks would prefer to dissolve the PBIT. That was also kind of consistent with, I guess, with some of the actions that we have taken as a city. Council has directed relative to helping businesses. You're helping businesses in other ways. Maybe this is another way to help businesses offload that LL&D cost and the city take that on. So the intent was for the association to decide whether or not they wanted to send that survey out, approve that survey, have any suggested changes to the survey. But as it is June now, and if there is an interest in the PBID resolution or dissolution by the association or by the city, the annual timeframe for that effort is around the date of the anniversary of each of the PBIDs. That happens to be in one of them in early August, mid-August, the other in later in August. So this would have to be a two-step process, whether it comes from the association or it comes from the city, where a survey would gauge the interest, and then the second step in that process would be a more formalized petition process for the property owners to decide whether to continue with the PBID.
Okay. So are there any questions? Bob, do
Well,
you have something?
May I?
Yeah.
So all I've ever wanted to do is support Mr. Coleman and his White Rabbit Coffee Shop, Craig Suvig's Suvig Cellars, Kuiper, Soaring Swine. All I've ever wanted to do sitting in this position is support them and try to help them. And I still feel the same way. I've been involved in this since 2012. Robert and I have fought some battles back and forth depending on what was going on. I'm absolutely in favor of dissolving the PBID. And only because I don't know why the city staff and the board or the business owners can't get together when there's an event. It seems like the biggest complaint for the last number of years has been we make plans, we implement plans, and then we tell them what we're going to do, when that wasn't at all what the contract, the MOU said. The MOU said they will be included. They will be able to have a say. And we just don't do that. And I don't know why we don't do that. And I'm telling you, regardless of what anybody says, I've been living the dream, and it just hasn't happened. And I don't know why, but that's why I'm in favor of dissolving the PBID. Let the staff, city staff, let the city manage it, and hopefully we have their best interest at heart, like we do everyone's best interest in the city at heart, and do our job and include them and help them grow their business, right? I mean, that seems to be a real simple thing. And if I communicated with my wife the way that we've communicated with them over the last number of years, my wife would no longer be my wife. I can tell you that right now. So that's my comments. I believe that we should dissolve this PBID. Let's send out this survey. Let's see what the business owners want, and then move accordingly.
Okay. Justin, you have something?
I mean, does this council have the authority to dissolve an association that is independently registered with the Secretary of State as an association?
I'm sorry.
No, I'm finished.
It would essentially be the property owner's decision through a petition, whether that petition was circulated by the association or by the city ultimately. It's it would be the property owner's decision through a petition process.
What about a dissolution of the MOU with that association, making it no different than any type of organization within the city of Yucaipa?
If you want to take that.
So first, Councilmember Beaver and members of the city council, as Mr. Casey said, the petition from the participating property owners is one method in which to commence the dissolution process. There are limited circumstances in which the city could also do that. It would be a separate track. At this point, my understanding is the path is to assess interest from the business owners and take that into account. The property owners. So again, just to clarify, there is a path available under some certain circumstances that the city could do it unilaterally, but that's not the path, as I understand it, that we're on right now.
John, do you have some, or David, either one?
I definitely think we need to make sure that we get their buy-in and what they want to do. I don't think we have the authority to make that decision for them based on what I'm hearing.
David, you have something?
Okay, a couple questions got answered, including whether we have the authority or not. I'm going to agree with Mayor Pro Tem Duncan. All I want to do is make sure our Uptown thrives. That's all I want in life. I mean, in this case, some of the business owners are my neighbors, and I want them to succeed. And I want everybody to succeed. I want everybody to make $1 million. Whoever wants to throw it out there and get out there and work hard and do it, do it. I support you 100%. I don't like the adversarial nature of what we have between the city and the Uptown Association. It's contentious. We can't, I don't know, well, I have an idea why, but we have to continue to work collaboratively. And I'm sure that's what Bobby Duncan wants, is that we want the Uptown Association and the city. I want the Uptown Association and the city to work hand in hand together. And if a dissolution is the answer and to start all over, I'm for it. But I want everybody to, just Rodney King, why can't we just get along? It's silly, but it's true. I don't want to have to sit here and argue and fight and ask these kinds of questions when we should be just working together in harmony. Just make it work out so everybody benefits, not just the city, not just the Uptown Association, and trying to, we're rattling our sabers, and it's just not worth it. Just dissolve it. I'm in favor of doing that, but we have to, apparently we don't have that authority to dissolve it from the dais. We have to let the PBID make that decision. And that survey needs to go out. I mean, that's a no-brainer.
It's actually not the PBID itself, but the property owners.
I'm sorry.
The majority of the property owners.
I stand corrected. Thank you.
So I also support the survey. I've said from the very beginning is that I want the Uptown property owners to decide whether they're going to dissolve this or not. That's been my positions from the very beginning. I do have to state that, since about 2011, I think the city council has spent close to $40 million in the Uptown. $40 million. And when I go to these meetings and it causes so much grief and so much contention, I totally understand why David and Bobby want to dissolve this. It serves no purpose. The city has, by its actions, we have spent $40 million in the Uptown. Don't you think we want that area to thrive? We want it to thrive. I mean, we spent $40 million. It's crazy. And then you sit through these meetings and it's as if we're trying to cut off these businesses, which is absolutely ludicrous. So unless that Uptown Association can start working collaboratively with the city, I would support the dissolution, but I also support the the rights of the people and the people in those properties in those areas to decide whether they dissolve it or not.
I'd just like to say that, for me, this seems like a no-brainer. Anytime there's going to be a meeting about the Uptown in any level, invite someone from that board to that meeting as if they're staff members to sit and listen and have input, and then go back to their board and report, and then have a collaboration in the decision-making. That seems like a no-brainer to me. I just don't get it. And that's how I would do it if I were the one making the decisions about this.
All right, so as of right now, we're here to make a motion and take an action on whether we support the survey. Is that correct, Ray?
Correct.
So is there a?
I make a motion that we approve the sending out the survey to the property owners.
As written? Or do you
As
wanna-
written, yes. Yes, I thought it was adequate.
Property and business owners or just property owners?
Well, property owners are the only ones that are going to make this decision because they're the ones paying the taxes.
Well, I think business owners are part of the
What's that?
PIBA now, are they? Is that what I heard?
So some of the business owners can now be as part of the association board. The actual PBID administration or the dissolution is only at the vote of the property owners. However, this survey itself was designed to get feedback from the stakeholders at large, so including property owners. And then there is a question on it is if you are a property owner or a business owner to help kind of filter through that vote, but really it's to solicit more of a global feedback on how we collectively can better serve that stakeholder group.
Yeah, but a property owner can't make a decision about property taxes. I mean, a property owner is the only one that can make a decision about property taxes because the business owner does not pay the property taxes, right?
At least
All right, so
directly.
as of right now, we have a motion. Bob?
That's
I'll
my
second.
motion.
And then we had a second?
And this is for the city to send out the survey.
Yes.
Can we have wording into a return date so there's not just, this is out there, hopefully comes back soon? I mean, this is gonna continue. I mean, we've talked about this. I've only been on the city council for 6 months and I've heard about it at almost every meeting. So I'd like to see the survey go out with a deadline that needs to come back to council so that we can make a decision in an expedient manner for the health of our uptown.
Well, Bob, Bob would have to amend his motion to.
I'll
include-
amend my motion to put a deadline on this to get this resolved. Yes.
And do you still second that?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, motion carries 5-0. All right, that takes us to item number 22, our draft capital improvement program. And this is Fermin.
Yes, thank you, and good evening, Mayor and council members. This item is the draft capital improvement program. Each year, as part of the annual budget preparation process, staff will present the draft capital improvement program and also the draft pavement management program to City Council for consideration and direction. The draft pavement management program was reviewed and approved by City Council at the April 26th City Council meeting. The approved draft PMP funding and expenditures are included in this draft CIP document before you, before you tonight. The draft CIP document identifies proposed funding sources as well as funding allocations for various projects. For many years, the city has aggressively pursued local, state, and federal funding to pay for these projects, or to help pay for these projects. The city has also pursued partnerships with other agencies to help fund those projects that are multi-beneficial in nature. On the screen, I'm sorry, on the screen before you is a chart that shows the various funding sources for the capital improvement program projects from 2002 to 2021, roughly a 19 or 20-year period. And as you can see on the screen, about 47% of the total project funding has been provided through state grants and federal grants, as well as agency partnerships. And I would like to note that many of the drainage projects that the city has constructed over the years and is planning on constructing here in the near future, they do require an extensive environmental review process. And that review process is required in order to obtain the required construction permits. For those projects, the environmental mitigation costs are included in the project cost estimates in the draft CIP document before you. This environmental mitigation, it is consistent with the Mitigation Lands Management Fund policy that was adopted by City Council in 2016, where that policy does include the city's approach of mitigating for these impacts locally here within the city, and specifically on city and flood control owned open space areas such as El Dorado Ranch Park and also the Oakland Creek corridor. With the economic conditions resulting from COVID-19 and also the amount of projects currently underway, some of those projects which are multi-phase projects that are larger in scope, staff does believe that it's appropriate to continue to focus on the projects, to focus resources on current projects only. At this time, I would like to introduce Landon Kern, the Assistant City Engineer, to present additional information on these projects.
Thank you, Fermin, and good evening, Mayor, members of City Council. I get the pleasure of walking you through some of our current, existing, and upcoming projects that are highlighted in this agenda report. There are quite a few to go over, so I will do my best to keep it brief and yet also provide you with some background and a summary of each and every project that we will be available to go over in more detail if any questions come up through this presentation here. Just to note, all of these projects that I'll be highlighting and that are in our report are consistent with the city's general plan. And with that, I will go ahead and start off with a list of projects. And this presentation and the slides we'll be going through are consistent generally with the categories starting on page 387 and 388 and 389 of the agenda report, and those different categories, beginning with the projects that are currently underway and are expected to be completed in the next 30 days or so. Starting right off with the drainage category, I'd say one of my least favorite calls I get every once in a while is, Landon, we have a sinkhole in town. We need you to come take a look at that. This was a emergency repair project associated with the sinkhole at the Dunlap Channel crossing that involved quite a bit of channel work and some repair work on the street in order to open that back up to traffic and ensure that that crossing was operating safely. Was completed last fall for approximately $31,000 with some engineering and some of our own staff work involved with that. Next was another kind of emergency response project. We got secured some funding through the Nrcs program with the phase 1, which was basically a 10-day mitigation measures program where we were able to install some debris capture basins with K-rail, erosion control measures, and K-rail placement to secure roadways remaining open following the fire and the anticipated debris and potential mud flows that would come off of the hillside in that burn area. That phase is now complete, and we're working through that final process to get those reimbursements. Now into the park and public facilities category, we have the citywide directional signage project, a relatively small project in the scheme of things, but you'll notice around town, just this last fiscal year, we have completed the installation of various signage with directions to various Yucaipa facilities and trails and different museums and so forth that are located throughout town, and I think they've served their purpose, and they're doing a good job directing people to the important facilities that we have in town, including our new Performing Arts Center. Next here, we have the Fire Station number 2 vehicle exhaust removal system. This is down at the station near the new Dutch Brothers at 13th Street there. This system connects to the vehicle exhaust pipes, so when those fire engines and the vehicles start up, that exhaust goes right out of the building and it doesn't linger inside the facility. It's a magnetic system, so as soon as they leave the facility, it disconnects and they can go on their way and hook it back up as soon as they get back in. That project was completed this last fiscal year. The City Yard Relocation project here, Phase 1, we have started the initial construction for this relocation of the city facility located behind the Wildwood Calvary Chapel Church and also behind the Fire Station number 1 off of Bryant there. The initial rough grading and grading to accommodate the new buildings that are being relocated and delivered to that facility, that grading effort has now been recently completed, and we're moving forward. You'll hear momentarily about the next phases coming up this next fiscal year. Moving into the traffic facilities and sidewalk improvement projects category, we have the Avenue E roundabouts and a sidewalk improvements project on Avenue E between 2nd and 3rd Street. This was a project that involved street, sidewalk, and storm drain improvements. Storm drain improvements actually went all the way down 3rd Street there to the Chicken Springs Wash. And of course, the roundabout intersection improvements, and we were able to complete the grind and overlay for the entire segment in between that stretch. That project is now complete. The installation of the traffic signal at Oakland Road and 2nd Street is nearly complete. The last items in work are dependent on the delivery of the signal poles. There were some delays due to COVID and other market conditions. We do expect those poles to arrive in the next week or so, and we'll complete that work and get that signal up and running. That project was awarded the Highway Safety Improvement Program grant funding that is funding the majority of that project, along with the local match component. The Yucaipa Boulevard widening project was completed actually very early on in this last fiscal year. This is the segment of street improvements, sidewalk improvements, storm drain, and 2 new traffic signals that were installed. Phase 2 was between 15th and 16th Street. And the Phase 1 was between 18th Street and Avenue E or Hampton, down there near the freeway. And of course, the widening and the median improvements that went along with that. The Chinaberry street improvements is connected to that project I just highlighted for you. It is along the west side of Chinaberry. We were able to install the ADA accessible sidewalk and street improvements to connect to that new intersection and the signal there. If you recall, there were some utility poles right in the middle of that street headed north, and this public improvement project required the relocation of those poles, which are now behind the curb on the west side. I'm going to move down to the CDBG Avenue A project, Adams Street to 1st Street. This segment is complete. The sidewalk and the associated ADA access improvements have been constructed along both sides of the street segment there. Next, I'll highlight the 13th Street Sports Complex parking lot. This is the parking lot that was recently paved and striped just adjacent to the 13th Street Sports Complex, and it ties in with the skate park as well, with the main access off of 13th Street. And the MOU with Yucaipa Valley National Little League had significant contributions to facilitate that construction that we were able to complete and is now in service. Finally, here in this category, we're closing out with the I-10 Wildwood Canyon Road Interchange Project Study Report. This is for the proposed new connection, new interchange to the I-10 freeway near the Wildwood Canyon Road, Kalamasa Boulevard intersection. The very first phase through the Caltrans engineering and environmental effort is the PID phase. What we have recently submitted is what's called the Project Study Report and a preliminary new connection report with 3 build alternatives, and we are hopefully weeks away from getting the final approval for this phase that is wrapping up, and we'll be transitioning into that next Caltrans phase, PAED, which I'll speak a little bit more about here momentarily. Next, we'll move on to the list of projects that have started this fiscal year and are rolling over and will be anticipated finishing these projects up within the next 12 months or so in fiscal year 21-22. Starting off with the Phase 2 of the Nrcs El Dorado Fire Mitigation and Storm Season Prep Project. This was another category of grant funding that we were successful in acquiring for the design and construction of a larger grading project, a debris basin, which is proposed at the intersection or the crossing that is of Wilson Creek at Jefferson Street to mitigate for the potential debris flows coming off of that burn area. and try to generate some more capacity just upstream of Jefferson before it gets down into our newly constructed Fremont Street crossing and the neighborhoods down in that area, requiring some coordination with private parties. And we're finalizing the design, and we'll be moving forward with construction here shortly in the coming months. The City Yard Relocation Project, I touched on the grading that was recently completed. We are finalizing the design, which is nearly complete, of the facilities and the associated connections to the utilities that will be constructed to accommodate that relocation of our facility there. Several different buildings are involved, but this project will be completed next year, and that is basically the erection and the installation of these new facilities and the main access point off of Oakland Road and the secondary or emergency access point off of Bryant Street and the utilities that will go along with that. So we're moving along with that multi-phase project here. Next, the Safe Routes to School 12th and 13th Street Sidewalk project. This is for the segments of 12th and 13th Street that are south of Avenue E. On 12th Street, it is on the west side of the street, down from Avenue E to Kentucky. And on 13th Street, it is along the east side of the street, from Avenue E almost to Oakland Road, just between Oakland and the Wilson Creek crossing there. Primarily, this funding from Caltrans was to improve the accessibility for pedestrians and students to the Dunlap Elementary School. Next, we have the 13th Street City Baseball Field parking lot improvements, which is directly across from the parking lot we just were hearing about on 13th Street, next to the baseball field there at the high school. This will involve a new drive approach, the asphalt parking lot improvements, the striping, increasing capacity, and then access off of Thunderbird Way there. So that will be starting shortly. The Oakland Road Neighborhood parking lot improvements, Transportation Development Act funding was obtained for this to construct the parking lot improvements and ADA accessibility to the trails and park facilities up at the soccer complex and some of the trails that connect to this area directly across from Shadow Hills Drive on the north side of Oakland Road there near the regional park. So these parking lot improvements will be moving forward shortly. The next series of projects are part of our PMP that was approved just several weeks ago. This is a series of projects that occur kind of simultaneously and in a phased approach in order to accommodate the overall street improvement citywide in accordance with that pavement management program. As was presented in that last item with the pavement management program, the idea with these projects here on this list is that they will be combined with the 21-22 pavement management program list. By having the larger quantities that we go out to bid with, we do see a lot better unit prices and competitive bids. And we can tackle this as kind of one larger project and get it done a little bit quicker than doing 1 year at a time. Next is the Wilson Basin Phase 1A grading project. I know we've had this covered in a lot of different reports, but it is part of the Oakland Creek specific plan, a very large drainage basin facility and channel improvements located up there near 2nd Street at the south of Oakland Road at the convergence of the Oakland Creek and Wilson Creek. This initial Phase 1A project is wrapping up. We're wrapping up the contract and finalizing that effort. And if you haven't been out there, you'll see that the channel has been realigned and the mass grading for the basin is complete. Already kind of seeing the benefits of what that's going to mean from a recharge perspective. And this work is paving the way for the next phases for the ultimate channel and basin improvements that will be part of Phase 1B. I'll talk a little bit more about in a moment. Next is the El Dorado Ranch Park and the Five Winds Ranch Park, Phase 1 grading. This is located at the easterly city limits there on Oakland Road on the north side. The preliminary plan for these park improvements was approved, revised and approved just this May in 2021. And in accordance with that plan, we've been able to move forward with the construction survey, the clearing and grubbing, and a lot of that initial grading activity to move forward with this new park facility up there. So that's going quite well. Next is the Wildwood Mountain Bike Trail, the single track, Phase 1 and 2. This is a new trail that was cut into city-owned property. It's about just shy of a mile of a single-track mountain bike course that is a loop, accessed from the easterly parking lot at the Wildwood Park. Construction's about 90% complete. We're going to add some signage to make sure it's clear which direction that this single track should be going in the loop. And I'll be speaking a little bit more about the next phase of that with the next list. So this next list is projects that are anticipated to begin after the end of this month and will be completed within the next 12 months prior to the next fiscal year. Starting right off with the Wilson 3 Basin Phase 1B improvements. This next phase of this very large drainage project is the ultimate channel improvements, the drainage structures, some slope stability and drainage improvements along those slopes, some fencing along some of the private property boundaries and our city yard facility. Basically all of the drainage improvements that are east of the 2nd Street location, excluding the ultimate lake and the park improvements that will be completed as a separate phase. And then ultimately the Phase 2 improvements are westerly of the 2nd Street there. So we're completing those bid packages as we speak, and we'll be going out to bid and moving forward, coming back to council with recommendations to move forward with the construction of 1B. Next here is the 4th Street drainage and sidewalk improvements. This is along the east side of 4th Street between Amberwood Place and County Line Road. It is a sidewalk improvement project there for this segment. Another sidewalk improvement project here is the Adams Street Sidewalk, Avenue B to Yucaipa Boulevard along the east side. So we'll be able to complete those improvements here with the next fiscal year. ATP Sidewalk project on Avenue E and 15th Street, Phase 1. This is along the north side of Avenue E from Dunlap Channel to 15th Street, and going up 15th Street on the east side from Avenue E toward Yucaipa Boulevard. The active transportation program funding for this is the primary source of funds for these sidewalk and pedestrian access improvements along this corridor. Next, we have the traffic signal modifications for the left turn phasing at various locations. Once again, we were successful in acquiring the Highway Safety Improvement Program funding for various locations, one of which on this list is the Yucaipa Boulevard, Yucaipa Valley Circle intersection there in front of the Vons Shopping Center. Each of these intersections, as a part of this project, was analyzed to ensure that a left turn phasing was warranted and would still accommodate the level of service needed for these locations, and these 5 were successful. We have requested an additional HSIP funding to accommodate the final intersection there, so we're waiting on approval of that before we go back out to bid with all of these intersection improvements that we'll be hoping to complete this next fiscal year. Once again, the next 5 projects are part of the pavement management program, and as I mentioned, with the 2020-21 list of projects, sub-programs there, the idea is to combine that year with this year and go out to bid and construct these improvements as one series of contracts. Next, we have the Oakland Road Widening, Colorado Street to Outer Highway 10 South, Phase 2. This project is for the traffic signals at Oakland Road and Colorado Street, as well as the Oakland Road and Outer Highway 10 South intersections. These 2 intersections and the signal modifications as a part of our general plan here and part of our city's development impact fee program are good examples of projects that will promote economic development in these areas, as well as accommodate the ultimate traffic needs and flow for these areas. Next, we have the Uptown parking lot and alley improvements. This is a project located behind the businesses along Yucaipa Boulevard in the Uptown, just south of those businesses between California Street and 1st Street. And we're finalizing the design for those improvements, and we'll be able to construct those in the next 12 months, tying in with the parking lot improvements that were completed in the last year or 2 over there by the new mural. Next, we have the Fifth Street improvements from Yucaipa Boulevard to Avenue E, Phase 2. Phase 1 was completed several years ago at the Yucaipa Boulevard intersection there, and kind of transitioning back into a segment between the Chicken Springs Wash and the Avenue E intersection. This Phase 2 will complete that segment and tie into the roundabout improvements that I'll speak about here in a moment. It involves a retaining wall along the east side of Fifth Street there and some drainage improvements to accommodate the drainage in that section there that's going to be completed. And then finally, the last list of projects. Generally speaking, these on this list are larger, longer-term projects that require multi-agency approvals and different environmental reviews and permits to facilitate the construction. Starting out with the Wilson Creek Dunlap Boulevard Bridge and channel improvements, 14th to the 10 freeway. The existing bridge that crosses Wilson Creek here is a bottleneck for the flows coming down through there, and this project will replace that bridge with a new structure to accommodate the, in accordance with the development agreement, and to accommodate the vehicles exiting that new development site there where the AMPM and the gas station is, crossing Wilson Creek over to the Dunlap Boulevard 14th Street intersection. Improves or accommodates the ADA and pedestrian access to and from the site, but once again, only the exit from the development site there. And the associated channel improvements to tie into the county's Wilson Creek. Next, we have the Pendleton Avenue at Oak Glen low water crossing, one of our last remaining low water crossing replacement projects through the Highway Bridge program here. This is this crossing of Oakland Creek, just south of Oakland Road. We're working with Caltrans to finalize some design modifications, and we'll continue to work with them to finalize that design and complete that effort and move forward into construction with another action that we'll return to council with. Next, again, we have the Wildwood Canyon Interchange at I-10. This is the next Caltrans phase as we wrap up this PID phase we're currently in here in the next several weeks or so. This next phase is a much larger effort. It's usually about a 36-month, about a 3-year process. What's called the PAED will involve the planning and environmental and engineering for the proposed interchange, including a more detailed analysis of each of the build alternatives, a full EIR and all of the public review that entails, as well as a formal new connection report that will be presented to and hopefully approved by FHWA to move forward into the final part of the design process where we can put the bid package and the plans together to go out to construction. So we're moving along with that Caltrans process and associated reviews. Next, we have the County Line Road Corridor Project from Bryant to Kalamasa Boulevard. This is the intersection and street and drainage improvements along this segment. It's a partnership with Kalamasa, given that the majority of this segment is about 50% in each agency's jurisdiction, and they are taking the lead on the construction and the bid package advertisements, and we're partnering with them to finalize that effort. This is the part of the project in this corridor that is funded by the LPP grant through SB1. Avenue E at 5th Street, the dual lane roundabout intersection improvements. This ties into the project I spoke a moment ago about the 5th Street Phase 2. They're at the intersection. This is a dual lane roundabout and ties into those street improvements and also includes the drainage, the storm drain necessary to accommodate the drainage going down 5th Street there. Next to Wildwood Canyon Mountain Bike Course Single Track Phase 3, this project expands and extends this series of mountain bike tracks and will likely involve some structures, some small wooden structures to make some crossings over some little natural drainage courses and additional signage and perhaps even some mitigation if we are required to in order to mitigate for some of the oak tree removals and some of the work that may need to be done to tie in the parking lot to the trail access there. And then I think finally on our list here is the Live Oak Canyon Road at Wildwood Creek Low Water Crossing. This is the final low water crossing replacement project that is a part of the Caltrans Highway Bridge Program funding that we've secured. We are just now initiating the preliminary design for that effort that will involve the bridge type selection and the initial environmental studies and right-of-way needs to move forward with this project. And as we've seen before, this Caltrans process through the Highway Bridge Program can take several years. So we're excited to kick that off. I guess kind of to conclude with these updates, as you can see, we're actively working to design and construct these projects that have been prioritized. And there are about 27 projects, I think, that I've been able to highlight, and we've been able to highlight through our report here, that are going to be completed in this upcoming fiscal year. And about 10 of those are the PMP programs. So we've got about 18 new separate construction contracts we'll be kicking off and managing over the next 12 months and closing those projects out. And we're excited to move forward and continue to see those improvements get in place and get put to good use. So going to be another productive and busy year. I'll hand it back off to Fermin here for a few closing remarks and maybe making any additional notes to these projects, and I'll stick around in case there are any questions.
Thank you, Landon. Just a few more items to note. Consistent with the council adopted policy, this draft CIP document does allocate 50% of the projected development impact fee revenue for next fiscal year as repayment to the general fund loan to the development impact fee program. And specifically for the public facility fee component, for that one, 100% of the projected revenue is allocated as repayment to the general fund loan. And also in March of this year, as you know, Congress passed the American Rescue Plan, which continues CARES Act 2020 funding for the city of Yucaipa. Yucaipa is anticipated to receive about $8 million in 2 installments. The guidelines for the use of these funds are a bit more restrictive than we anticipated and can only be used for water, sewer, or broadband improvement type projects. So staff has been reviewing the eligibility criteria for the use of those funds, and we'll return to council with recommendations for allocation of these funds to some of the CIP projects that you saw on the list here today, the ones that would be eligible. At this time, the draft CIP does not include any of this CARES Act ARP funding for the projects. So with that, staff's recommendation is that City Council review the draft 7-year capital improvement program for fiscal years 21-22 through fiscal year 27-28 and direct staff as appropriate. That concludes my report, our report.
Well, that was an impressive list, very long list, and you guys are going to be really busy the next couple of years. So are there any questions for staff?
Just real fast, the CARES Act money does not allow for water, sewer, and, is that what I heard? Does not allow it?
It
Or
allows
will not
for-
fund it?
It allows for water, sewer, or broadband improvement
And,
projects.
and that's all, nothing else?
If I may, in terms of infrastructure, there are
Okay.
other eligible uses of the funding, including making up for lost revenues based on their calculations. So what Fermina is referring to is probably in the draft budget, which we would be presenting Thursday, some portion of the ARPA funding being related to the general fund and another portion being a part of infrastructure recommendations to City Council.
Okay.
John, do you have anything? Nope. Good. Bob, do you have something?
No, I thought it was a good report. Thank you.
Justin, you have anything? No, it's really an impressive report. You guys are being really busy. I don't want to throw another thing at you, but I'm going to. Phase 3, have we started funding Phase 3 of the Yucaipa 15th Street to the freeway? I know we have Phase 1 and 2. You've noted that they're finished, but have we started allocating funding toward Phase 3?
Not yet, but we do have some unallocated traffic facility funds that we can start moving in that direction. Staff can certainly come up with a recommendation for city council between now and final adoption of the CIP with the budget on the 28th, so.
Well, I don't want to put it on a high priority list at this point, but I was wondering if it was, if monies were being allocated to that phase.
Maybe in the form of a decision-making process for council, the remaining fund balance and the traffic facility fund.
Okay.
And what are you talking about?
Well, there's the third and final phase of 15th to the freeway. There's one more phase to be completed, so.
Between 16th Street and 18th Street.
Right.
It's currently 2 lanes in each direction.
All right, so this is no action needed, it's just review, correct?
Just any input that council may have, which we just received a little, but if there's anything else, we're happy to incorporate that into the final document and present it to the council on the 28th with the budget.
Okay. Is there anything on the high on your priority list?
No. Maybe a question was asked of me the other day, and it's related, but not directly. Are we going to do any improvements on the roundabouts that we have right now? I know that people have brought to my attention some, disrepair.
Yes, if you're referring to the roundabouts at Avenue E and 2nd and 3rd Street, we're in the process of finalizing the I'll call them the hardscape plans that were based on the concept plan approved by City Council earlier this year, and also finishing up the street lighting plans so both can be constructed at the same time.
Okay, thanks.
We need to restripe the ones on the Boulevard too. That new and improved sort of yellow striping material that we approved was supposed to be great. It's just about deteriorated on both of them.
Yeah, it's lasted a while, but it is.
Yeah, it lasted a while, it did.
And one other point of clarification, if I may. Both Landon and Fermin referenced the combined PMP activities or bids, and that may result in a savings overall, or a better unit price for those projects. That would also potentially result in staff recommending a higher contingency for those projects, and there were a few projects that didn't quite make it up to the priority list in the PMP that have been identified, and we would strive to include those if in fact our unit prices come in a little better than we have budgeted, and if in fact we're able to move forward with both sets of projects at one time.
Is everyone good? Thanks, Landon. Good job.
Thank you.
All right, so our next 2 items are public hearings. Our first item is the Yucaipa disposal.
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
And I'll just for formalities, I'll open the public
Okay.
hearing. There you go.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is a public hearing pursuant to Prop 218. On April 8th, the Solid Waste Committee, which is comprised of Mayor Bogue and Mayor Pro Tem Duncan, met with city staff and Richard Nino of Yucaipa Disposal to review and discuss the various items that are detailed in the staff report before you. They included the industry updates pertaining to COVID-19, the 2020 annual report, the proposed rates that are before you for action this evening, the household hazardous waste fees, the WDA agreement, and the residential program and legislative updates. So at this time, I'm going to call Richard Nino forward, and he can provide a brief summary of those items.
Good evening, and thank you very much, Ms. Crawford, for the introduction. Honorable Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, City Staff, and ladies and gentlemen of the public. Richard Nino with Yucaipa Disposal to give you some brief updates about the 2020 Solid Waste Program Report and the other items that were recently mentioned. First and foremost, on the residential sector, I would like to touch base on a few items. Needless to say, 2020 was a challenging year, not only for the public at large, but also for the city solid waste hauler. We were faced with challenges as we were all impacted by COVID-19. And needless to say, through the thick and thin of the pandemic, we were able to continue our essential services to the residents and the businesses of Yucaipa. During 2020, specifically on the residential side, we did add, interestingly enough, approximately 120 new residential services. And what we saw as being the most impactful piece of the pandemic was as it relates to trash volumes. With residents staying at home because of the stay-at-home orders, children no longer attending school, people limited with their ability to go to work, and those working from home, we saw increases in trash collection, recycling collection materials, and green waste collection volumes. It was real evident with the bulky item collection program that we have in the city that people were actually doing things at home. The bulky item collection program includes collection of appliances, furniture, and other large items that would otherwise not fit in the automated barrels that we service. And through that program, the tons increased by over 33% to almost 400 tons of bulky items collected. That's a lot of bulky item material and really the most we've ever seen in the city of Yucaipa. We're glad that residents were able to take advantage of those programs while they were at home and hopefully improving their residence. Sharps Collection, which is another newer program that we introduced to the city about 2 years ago now. 2020 represented the first full year of the program. We collected approximately 760 pounds of Sharps material. Sharps are those items that people utilize to self-medicate at home, be it injection syringes, lancets, and the like. As you can imagine, collecting 760 pounds of Sharps for proper disposal, that's a lot of Sharps. Again, the residents are fully utilizing that program. On the commercial sector, the customer count was relatively flat during 2020, not surprising given the circumstances. Similarly, the tonnages were relatively flat as well. At the outset of the pandemic, we did have an experience of some declines in the services, as is to be expected. But we saw that the commercial sector was rather resilient here in Yucaipa. And by one way or another, many businesses were finding creative ways to stay in business. So we didn't see sharp declines in that sector, but we did see some modest declines. The solid waste program report includes a lot of detailed information that we compiled during the course of the year. It includes a tabulation, recording, and notation of all residential tons that we collect for the respective waste streams, including trash, recycling, and green waste. Similarly, we track all of those tonnages for the commercial and roll-off sectors, which is representative of primarily development and large volume generators. We track that information in order to monitor and ensure that the city of Yucaipa is compliant with the stringent solid waste collection and diversion requirements. We're pleased to report that to date, through 2020, in light of the challenges, that Yucaipa remained in good standing, meeting those requirements. Moving on to the rate section of the presentation. We did have extensive conversations with city staff as well as the Solid Waste Committee to discuss Yucaipa Disposal's analysis of the rate review, as well as the conversation and recommendation where we step forward to forego the adjustment for Yucaipa Disposal on the residential rate adjustment this year, just out of awareness of the impacts to the residents and trying to do our part to see what we could do to help. Nevertheless, with the increases in solid waste, trash, recycling, and green waste, we did still see increases in the residential costs as follows. The 60-gallon rate adjustment is, as proposed by the committee, would be 90 cents for the year, from $28.89 to $30.79. The 30-gallon service rate would increase by 97 cents from $21.77 to $22.74. And the 50-gallon rate, which is utilized by those low-volume generators or those individuals that do an excellent job recycling, that service would increase by $1 from $16.14 per month to $17.14 per month. I should note that the recommended rates do include the updated and revised waste delivery agreement disposal fee of $38 per ton, of which your city staff played an active role for the waste delivery agreement cities, which is a consortium of San Bernardino cities. I think the number is about 12 or 13, in order to secure better rates for the city of Yucaipa and those participating cities. By virtue of participating in that program, San Bernardino County remains as the primary disposal site for the city's trash, as well as the trash of the participating cities. As I mentioned earlier, that the basis for the adjustments are the service adjustments for Yucaipa Disposal for their hauling costs. Adjustments in disposal and processing, which is a computation of the total tons and the respective disposal and processing tip fees. And any changes in program fees, which this year the recommendation is to include a modest adjustment on the residential HHW fee or household hazardous waste by 3 cents a month in order to maintain that budget item solvent in the coming years. Additionally, there were some commercial adjustments in the proposal to account for increased pressures for reaching state-mandated recycling requirements in the organics recycling arena, primarily food waste. Want to touch a little bit on the future of solid waste and what impacts are going to be before us. You may have read in the detailed staff report that was mentioned of Senate Bill 1383, the Short-Lived Climate Pollution Act. It's all related and surrounds the state's efforts to improve air quality and mitigate greenhouse gas emissions, which have been found to be a major polluter from organics decomposing in landfills. As a result of that, the state has passed and is expecting all cities throughout the state to implement aggressive organics recycling programs. What does that mean for Yucaipa Disposal and other cities throughout the state? I will highlight some of those requirements just to give you an idea of what that is. On the residential side, we're looking to implement a food waste recycling program. So essentially, any food waste that is not consumed at the property nor put in the garbage disposal down the drain, that food waste will be recycled by Yucaipa Disposal. There will be an expanded commercial food waste and green waste recovery and recycling requirements. There will be an edible food recovery requirement for the city, and that means any food that remains from either grocery stores, food processors, or restaurants that is edible be recovered and distributed through food banks, food pantries, and the like, so that people who are faced with food insecurity or challenges in securing their food have a viable source to collect that food and put it to good use rather than having it disposed and ending up in the landfills. In addition, the city will be asked to implement an expanded procurement program for recycled products, including compost that presumably could be used in expanded community giveaways, as well as potentially used at the city's parks. Other elements include increased requirements for education, outreach, enforcement, monitoring, and tracking of said compliance. With that, that concludes my report. There's a lot of information in the staff report, but I'm more than happy to answer any questions for you.
Thank you, Richard. I do have one public comment, so perhaps we'll listen to him and then we'll get you for some more questions. Is Mike Roger here? Thanks for waiting, Mike. It's a long wait.
How you doing?
Good.
Yeah, the reason why I came to talk to you guys tonight is because I got this letter in the mail from the city that they were going to raise the cost. And I said, well, how much is it? Well, we don't know. And I go, well, we just gave you a raise. We put it on our property tax, which I was opposed to. I didn't want on my property tax. But that, I went ahead and did that. I complied with it. And now it's like, well, we need more money. Well, who wants the money? Is it you? And they go, no, it's the city. That Burtick is telling me that you guys want the money. It's not them. So I got a problem with this here because it sounds to me like it's a road being made right to my bank account. And since I have to pay that bill, I think I need to know a little bit about what more this is going to entail. Because you can rip up a road 1,000,000 times and get more revenue every year to rebuild that road over and over and over again, and it goes on and on and on. And so, see, I have some concerns about that. And that's all I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to be fair about this. I'm surprised that nobody else came here. I'm the only one, the only person out of everyone I've talked to in this entire town, and nobody liked it. Nobody. My neighbors, my friends, nobody. I couldn't find one person. So that kind of baffles me a little. Yeah, I'm sorry, but you lost me on this. I don't know. And all I am is just a guy trying to pay his trash bill. I'm just trying to pay my trash bill and go on with my life. That's it. I don't want any problems with it. I just want to know what, how much I'm going to pay. I paid it ahead of time because I didn't want to be put on the tax roll. I didn't want to be put on that, so I paid it before it was due. But now I don't even know when it's going to get paid because they want more money, and so now it's, instead of paying it in May, I'm paying it in June. So if nobody's ever told you this before, I'm telling you now. Just me, but that's what I see. And there's a lot of other people just like me. They may not have the time to come down here and talk about this, but I do. Because I've been here since 1952. I was born and raised in this town. My relatives have died in this town, and I was here when nobody even knew where this town was. So yeah, it means something to me. And that's all I have to say. So if I could, if I could just get somebody to answer my questions about what that really means, because if it's going to be every year, Bobby Duncan called me on the phone, and he acted a little surprised to me. He goes, you didn't, I was kind of surprised he called me, because I didn't think he was going to call me. He goes, you seem a little surprised. I go, well, yeah, I kind of am. But I just wanted to know what's going on with the trash bill. And there was this need to do this. So I went along with it. But now we're here again.
Mike, that was 3 minutes, so I appreciate that. You know what? If you can shoot me an email, I have driven to multiple residents through the years trying to explain this because it's not that simple. I always thought it was some simple thing where it was just a guy grabbing trash and taking it to the dump, and it's a lot more. And I have no problem coming over, and I will explain it to you personally. So shoot me an email.
All right.
Thanks, Mike. Richard, do you want to come back up? So are there, do you have anything else?
Mr. Roger? Could you stick around for 5 minutes? Maybe we can get some of your questions answered.
Richard, so this is a public hearing, so is there a rebuttal to?
I would love to have his questions answered so he understands exactly why we're paying more and
It is, just for the record, it's a highly complex thing. We're talking about fuel costs, we're talking about minimum wage costs, we're talking about WDA agreements, we're talking about, so.
And I agree, but I
It
think
could, literally could go on for
he
hours.
needs to hear that it's just not it's not on a whim, or we're not trying to just fleece the public.
No, it's not at all.
Thank you for the question, and for Mr. Rogers, I thank you for your questions as well, so that I can try to answer them as best as I can and potentially answer some questions for residents at home as well. First and foremost, the amount of the increase and it was unknown and will be unknown until council takes action this evening. So when the question arises, well, what will be the fees or amounts charged for the 21-22 year, it is unknown. During the presentation and the formulation of rates to the Solid Waste Committee, there's the calculation of the rates and then 3 options that are presented to the committee to select from, which provides different combinations of subsidy amounts that help offset the costs for seniors and those individuals that generate less solid waste. That subsidy program has been in place now for, I want to say about 10 years or so. So that is one variable about the unknown amount. After tonight's council meeting and the council's decisions, we will be able to quantify the specific amounts for each residential account based on their current levels of subscriptions. You may be aware that residents do have an option to request additional containers, be it trash, green waste, or recycling. With the additional service comes additional costs. So each amount is dependent upon the level of subscription by each resident. As it relates to notifications of the public, Councilmember Avila, you brought that up last year. And our intent after this meeting and our goal by the end of this week is to mail out postcards to every resident in the city to make them aware that an adjustment is forthcoming and that they do have the option and to prepay their solid waste expenses so that it does not appear on the property tax. As far as the drivers behind this year's adjustment, I did mention during the presentation that there are a few factors, and all of the factors impacting this specific residential adjustment are as follows. 1, a 3-cent change per month in the household hazardous waste fee from 30 cents a month to 33 cents a month. And then changes in disposal and processing costs as they relate to the trash, green waste, and the recyclables that we collect. So in 2020, we tally up all of the tonnages that were collected in the residential sector. We then allocate on a pro rata share based on the subscriptions that the various customers have so that they are allocated an equitable amount of those increases from increased disposal and processing. So those monies that we collect for disposal and processing, Yucaipa Disposal does not retain those. In fact, we have already paid those bills in the prior year. What we are trying to do through this rate adjustment process is recover those monies that Yucaipa Disposal expended on behalf of the residents, paying the respective tip and processing fees for trash, recycling, and disposal, and green waste disposal. And I believe that that answers, at least as I currently can with this brief time, answer those questions.
And the cost increase is not as what you are charged. I mean, that's what you're charged by either the county or by the state or somebody else, right?
That is correct. The fees that are being charged are by the county and processors for green waste, of which we utilize 2 different options. In fact, this year's green waste disposal cost was a little bit lower because we were able to leverage another facility. Disposal per ton tip fee, it is going down in the forthcoming rates, but because the volumes from last year were higher, we are recovering the cost for that increase that we saw last year. I would anticipate that this year, as the economy is opening up and we're now going back to what is hopefully a new norm, we will see less residential disposal, and that may reflect in next year's rates. But with the future of food waste recycling requirements, as well as other elements related to SB 1383, I cannot foresee any jurisdiction in the state having decreased costs in the next couple of years, because these are the most onerous impacts to the solid waste industry in the last 25 years.
Richard, there's a bill that's to delay, I believe, that.
That is correct. That's Senate Bill 619, sponsored by Laird, Assemblymember Laird, and I believe the city had already I believe the council or some of the council signed the letter in order to support the delay.
Right.
of
And
that
it has
bill.
that, is it gone through committee and is it in?
It is still in committee. It seems to be garnering some support. Yucaipa Disposal is not the only city that's going to be challenged with the implementation of those requirements. It is very significant. However, there seems to be an effort to modify that bill by some degree to delay the imposition of penalties and fees upon cities who fail to implement the program requirements. It was hoped that at the outset it would do more than that and extend the implementation requirements, but it's been modified somewhat, so it has been tempered.
All right, thanks, Richard. Do you have something?
So the gentleman that was speaking earlier, when he was asking what is the increase going to be, the answer was, we don't know until council decides, right?
That is correct.
Right, and that's what I was trying to help him understand, that tonight's meeting, we are in the process of deciding how much we're going to approve as far as the increase in the rates. Obviously, we have to increase the rates because of all the ridiculous legislation that's coming out of Sacramento. It's just always an ongoing ridiculous situation where they just keep changing the rules, and that always costs us, you and I, money. That's the bottom line. So we're going to make that decision here in a couple of minutes, and then you'll know what the rate is.
Right, any other questions?
Real fast, once we approve this, you said you're going to start sending out mailers, and thank you for that. I'd forgotten I said that, but then you reminded me, because I was going to bring that up again. Normally, it starts at July, I think, is when the new rates start and the notification gets out. But we're already into our second week, and it'd probably take you a few days to get a process. Is there going to be a period after July, a grace period, so to speak, for those who want to pay the full amount before they get into the tax roll automatically, roll into the tax roll?
The deadline for that is July 16th, and that will be a part of their flyer.
Okay.
If those that stay on tax roll billing, they're not going to pay anything until that first tax installment in October and then in April.
Okay. Just want to make
Right.
sure that we have some time if
Yes,
we
sir.
want to pay full, such as Mr. Rogers.
Thanks, Richard. So if there's anything else, you have something, John?
Got a couple.
Okay.
Do we have to approve the tax roll billing? Because during my campaign and even recently, I've had several constituents voice their disapproval of the tax roll billing. I mean, it seems a little odd to me that we have to, in order to get out of it, they have to pay for a service they have not received yet. We don't normally do that with anything else in life. Normally, you get a bill when she gets the service rendered. And then to follow up with that, how in the world do we have the county collecting and dealing with billing for a private company? They don't do that for anybody else, I don't think.
In answer to your question about the county's ability to implement those fees, the tax roll billing assessment for solid waste is not unlike the other charges you may see on your property tax bill, such as vector control agencies, school district bond measures, other state bond measures. It is a process that is allowed by state code as well as the county and the cities, obviously. City of Yucaipa is not the only city that has tax roll billing in place. There are numerous cities that do that throughout Southern California. It is a mechanism that affords the city to face decreased costs by having to go through lien actions as we had in years past. There is one benefit to being on tax roll because the amount of the charge does not change. It simply is a different billing mechanism. Residents can receive the service from July through December and not pay a dime until December through property tax roll billings. So the notion that there's actually, I guess I stand corrected. There was a notion about prepaying to avoid tax roll billing. That would be absolutely accurate. But on the flip side, to avoid the issues of prepay, taking advantage of the property tax roll billing eliminates that, because we wouldn't see a dime until, or actually the residents wouldn't pay until December, I think is when the first installment is due. And Yucaipa Disposal in turn wouldn't see anything until probably January, February of the following year. So it does help cut costs from that perspective.
In addition, as detailed in the staff report, we have found that our single-family residential delinquencies have fallen considerably. And as detailed in the staff report, fiscal year 18-19, there was 1,108 delinquent accounts. This year, the projection's 49. So
The
we're,
delinquent accounts, who's responsible for that? Is that us or Burtec?
in the past, it's been Burtec, but it's been a cost that's been repassed on in future rate increases. It's the cost of doing the business.
And we lien their property regardless, correct?
Right,
We're
but
leaning
it's a
their-
longer
We're
process.
leaning their property, right?
Correct.
That is correct.
Well, it seems that some of the folks in our city don't like having to deal with the county when it comes to, if they have a problem with Burtec or Yucaipa Disposal, they're told to contact the county. Or the county tells them to contact Burtec or Yucaipa Disposal, and they get the runaround. So if they're having an issue, it should come from the disposal company, and they should go to them. The county shouldn't be a part of it, in my opinion. And then, yes, there are other cities that do it, but just because it's good for them doesn't necessarily mean that's good for Yucaipa. There are other cities that have started it and have since stopped. I think one of our neighboring cities no longer does it because the city residents had enough displeasure with it. They finally changed it. I am kind of surprised that more people didn't come to talk about it tonight, because I had a lot of people talked about this to me during my campaign and even recently. So I think a lot of people think they just have to accept it. But I'm kind of inclined to say we don't put it on the tax roll billing. For those people that are delinquent, you go after them. For the people that handle their bill like grown-ups, then they do it the right way. I don't see why we have to be involved. And then the last thing is when they have the tax roll billing, and this is kind of going off the reservation a little bit, does the disposal company give a refund back to the city? Is there a refund based on what's paid because it's only one bill?
The amount collected through the county tax assessor is submitted directly to the city. We receive the funds first. Then we pass the payment on to Kuiper Disposal, and then we get our franchise fee back, the HHW fee.
Okay, so I guess what I'm getting at is how and why is the trash company paying for a code enforcement officer?
Because it's a part of that compliance with 1383. We need that coordination in the community to work with the field staff of Yucaipa Disposal to meet with our businesses that are part of that more ordinance in the future requirements of 1383 to ensure ongoing compliance, and that we're communicating with our business sector and eventually our residential customers regarding the new mandates on the legislation. So that's one of our code enforcement officers who are going to be trained in knowing that code and what the requirements are in this community. In addition to residents having to call the county to address questions regarding if they have concerns regarding pickup of a delivery or can or bulky item, the county wouldn't be answering that question anyway. The question would come to either Yucaipa Disposal or my staff, and we help that customer through their issues and reach out to Burtec to ensure that that concern or issue has been addressed, and then they report back to me or Kim that it has been, to ensure that they're getting good customer service. And I can honestly say it's really within the same day, if not the next day, that we're getting the response back that the customer issues have been addressed.
Okay.
In
Well,
terms of a local city, the only local, I know Highland, but I know they're still implementing tax roll billing.
And that's not really on our agenda tonight, is the tax roll billing.
Right. This is,
Tax roll billing was adopted by council 2 years ago via ordinance.
I understand that, and then
we
the
need to,
reason-
we need to bring it back to what we're doing at this point, just based on time. So if we want to bring it back at a future council meeting,
You know what, I
gotta, but I don't really want to go there at this point. I want to redirect back to the 5 different items. And so as of right now, you have anything else, John? You have another question?
Not at this time. I might
Okay.
later, but not right now.
So I'm going to go ahead and close. Thanks, Richard. I'm going to go ahead and close this public hearing and look for a motion.
I make a motion. My motion is to approve 1, 2, and 3. And 3, I would approve what the committee recommended, which is option B, and then 4 and 5. So that's my motion, that we approve those items.
Option B or option 2?
It's option
Option
B.
B.
That was the committee.
That's the one that we had recommended.
Oh, I see,
So-
okay.
It's still subsidized.
Yeah, it's 3B, option 2.
It's still a subsidy, so.
All right, I'll second it.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, so that takes us to item number 24. This is also a public hearing, so I'm going to open up the public hearing, and I sense Ben is going to do this quickly, right?
Yes, I will work very expeditiously on this. All right, thank you, all Mayor and City Council members. Before you is case number 19093, it's a general plan amendment, ordinance number 399 to change the land use designation, property from RS 10M to institutional, and then along with it is a conditional use permit, architecture review, and oak tree permit to permit the construction of a 3640 square foot new sanctuary building in place of an existing place of worship for Kalamasa Church of Christ. The project itself is located at 13524 California Street. It is approximately 1.7 acres and does feature an existing place of worship. Kind of for some background or context of why this project itself is before you guys today or City Council today is as part of Ordinance number 345, the City Council at their meeting of August 22nd, 2016 had approved that ordinance, which ultimately resulted in legal nonconformance of the existing place of worship. Now, ordinance number 345 itself was to address residential uses and ensure consistency in the scale between those land use districts. So as part of the original residential code, listed additional uses that were conditionally permitted. However, this list of additional uses included things such as jails and racetracks and other kind of land uses that would not be compatible with the residential district. And as part of that ordinance, the institutional uses or places of worship itself in that list also was removed. And so this really, the general plan amendment itself is to establish the site as institutional to address this nonconformance and would reflect both the historic use of the site as well as the planned use as part of this conditional use permit. The conditional use permit itself is for the redevelopment of that existing place of worship to essentially result in a 3640 square foot sanctuary building to replace the existing one, the creation of new parking spaces to meet the development code and ADA requirements, additional landscaping features, and then itself, the facility operational characteristics would remain the same with services on Sundays and Wednesday evenings. And then as part of the application, there are 2 oak trees within the parking lot and public right-of-way improvements that would be impacted. And so that's part of this application as well as for the removal and replacement of those trees. The building itself it features 104-foot seats, 2 multipurpose rooms, and the restrooms to service it. And then as part of the architecture, they are proposing a kind of metal constructed building, but does feature kind of a variety of different elements to kind of soften the design, including kind of a decorative dormer feature that projects out over the entrance, a covered porch area, and then a stone base as additional articulation and material choices for the building. As part of the project review through the planning division, 1 public comment was received requesting a noise wall. However, as part of the site, the new building would be located actually further than the existing building, and so that increased distance will reduce any potential potential noise issues. However, a solid fence has been added to the conditions. As part of the environmental review, the general plan amendment itself would correct a non-conforming or site conformance issue and therefore exempt under the general rule or 15063 or 15061B3 of the Seawood guidelines. And then the redevelopment itself is a modest change over the existing conditions, would be exempt under 15302 of the Seawood guidelines. As part of a general plan amendment, it does require Plan Commission review first, and it was reviewed at their regular meeting of May 19th. They did recommend approval of the project with the additional condition for a vinyl fence along their rear and side property line. Some site photos just showing the existing conditions of the place of worship, the oak trees that are on the site, with the majority of them to be preserved, and then the existing building in the foreground that would be replaced with the new building. And with that, the Plan Commission did recommend approval of the project, and then I am happy to also read the ordinance number 399 title at the council's pleasure, and then that project applicant representative is also here.
All right, come on up, Craig.
How are you? Mayor Bogue, council members. I'll try to be a little briefer than Mr. Landon. So, real quick, just a couple things. I want to start by just saying before I only have a couple things to say, but I've been a resident here for 26 years, had business owner here for 26 years. And, you know, on a yearly basis, you see the change in Yucaipa, but it's not until you sit through Mr. Kern's presentation that you realize how much is being done and how much is being done in Yucaipa on a daily basis. And it's impressive, and Public Works, city staff, council, you all need to be commended for that. So back to the project. Ben, if you can pull it up for just the actual site plan. There you go. So currently, there's a chain link fence around the perimeter of the property. There's a vinyl fence back here in the back portion where there's a residence. Other than that, there's really not anything except one mobile home right here. At Planning Commission, it was kind of a very strange Planning Commission last time. I think one of you was here and many of you and staff were here. They had requested a vinyl fence around the perimeter, which I had agreed to after speaking to the members of the church and so forth. They think that's a little onerous for a older church that's trying to grow right now and trying to do this work. This is a very big expenditure for them. A couple of reasons. One is that you have, from the building here to here, you have 130 feet. So while there is a little bit of traffic up here, there's really no buildings impacted by that. In the back, you've got the driveway space here, and you've got about 100 feet from here to here. So again, there's no real noise issues there. And this is not the main area where people are going to be congregating around. There's a 28 feet here, and this, as you can see, is very, very heavily with the oak trees. We did an oak tree study. Mr. Frank can help us with that. We spent a lot of time making sure that when we designed this, that we did not impact the oak trees. We have two in the front that are impacted, and they just happen to be where we have to put the right-of-way. So other than that, we did a real good job, I think, of designing the site. So the only thing I would have to say is I would very much suggest that we be able to keep the fencing the way it is at this point, because we are set back so far from the perimeter in those areas. Other than that, that's it.
Thanks, Craig. All right, so I don't have a public comment, so that's going to take us to applicant rebuttal. Now I'm going to close the public hearing and open it up for council discussion. Are you guys okay with changing the fence requirements back to the original?
So, may I?
Yes. Go ahead.
So, I'm very familiar with this project. I've known these folks for many, many years. I moved up here because of this church in 1981. Our oak tree ordinance was never designed to restrict a lot right in the middle of town. We literally rendered this property, we devalued this property because there's 15 oak trees here, and there's just very limited space that they can use. In fact, at one time I recommended the city buy it and call it Oak Tree Park because there's just too flippin' many trees there. And I don't think this ordinance was designed to restrict in town the oak trees. Obviously, up where Dick Riddell lives along the Wildwood Canyon, beautiful trees. The ordinance was designed for that. I approve. I think this is a good project. I just don't understand why our ordinance doesn't have some limitations when it restricts a lot like this, especially in these conditions. And I agree, we need to eliminate that fence requirement because there's no way that's going to be a problem.
Do we have any issues with the oak tree at this point? I mean, is it,
I think just 2 of the oak trees would have to be removed.
but there's no, that's not hanging us up anywhere. We're good to go.
No, as a, I guess, normal course of action, the oak tree permit itself would be administrative level review, but because it's tied with this project, it's included for council's reference. But the oak tree permit with less than 4 trees itself is approved at the staff level typically.
All right. With that, is there a motion to accept? Amended?
I make a motion that we approve this project and eliminate the fence requirement.
You say there was a public comment that specifically asked for some type of noise barrier?
Yeah, so it was a project notice comment that had requested a noise wall to be implemented along the property line. And so that letter is included in the staff report package.
Was it the intent of the planning commission that this vinyl fencing would serve as such?
The dialogue itself was more for the aesthetic kind of purposes, was the removal of the chain link and replacement with a more attractive fence
So
material.
it wasn't intended for sound?
According to this letter from Mr. Mitchell Emerson, he requested a sound wall be installed.
Is this coming from the mobile home park side or the
Yes,
other side?
apparently he's the owner,
For the mobile
or the
home park?
family, his family owns the Valley Breeze Mobile Home Park. And that they talked about noise and but the potential of weddings, funerals, and of course, weekly services. Request that the church be required to build a sound wall on the 2 sides of the property that faces my senior tenants. That's his quote.
This particular congregation doesn't allow funerals in their building. They don't allow weddings in their building. The only thing they use it for is to meet on Sunday, and they sing inside the building. There's no noise. Most churches allow those things, but their belief is not that they can do that in that building.
Okay.
I
That's
do
good
know
to
that-
know.
I do know the Church of Christ typically does not allow instruments, so it's all a cappella, so that wouldn't be concerning, but I would hate to see and have to have our law enforcement be put in the awkward situation of trying to enforce noise complaints against a church, and I don't think any law enforcement officer wants to do that
That'd be code compliance probably, but not.
on a Sunday. Somebody's gonna call the cops to report a noise complaint, I can promise you, on a Sunday morning.
Is there already problems now because there is a church there, so?
No, and as part of the staff report, both for the Plan Commission and City Council, in recognition of the increased setback proposed with the new building, any noise-related concerns would actually be improved over the baseline condition because of that increased distance. So the discussion itself wasn't, at least in staff's recommendation to Plan Commission, wasn't in regards to the noise impacts because of that increased distance. It was just through the discussions with the Plan Commission, it was more, I think, the aesthetic value of a vinyl fence in lieu of chain link.
Okay. So Mayor Pro Tem Duncan has a motion.
I'll second his motion.
And before we take action, I do need to read the ordinance title, if I may.
Yes.
Ordinance number 399, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Yucaipa, California, amending ordinance number 343, amending the official land use plan and zoning ordinance of the City of Yucaipa.
All right, so with that, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, so that's going to take us to a study session. Is this something that we want to do this evening, or do we want to move this to a different council?
We can certainly continue this to another meeting.
You guys want to knock this one out, or do you want to move it to another meeting? What's that?
We can take this at another meeting, and Sheila would be happy to come back again.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did not realize that we had a consultant here. You're so quiet sitting over there, so I didn't. So no, we are going to go ahead and take this now. So go ahead. So I apologize. She has to sit here the whole time, and then we cancel on her. That's terrible. So go right ahead.
All right, sorry. Yeah, so I did want to introduce the Freeway Corridor Specific Plan update for council's kind of background and at least seek initial direction as we move forward with the update process. I'm going to quickly move through a few different slides, and then Sheila will take over. For context, this is the area, or kind of the largest undeveloped area within the city of Yucaipa, running adjacent to Interstate 10. Placeworks did get a very nice drone shot of just kind of showing the context of the Freeway Corridor Specific Plan area that we're talking about. And so I'll kind of let this pass through. You can see the pumpkin patch facilities kind of along there now showing up in the background. And then this at least just gives a good context of the existing site in question that's part of the Freeway Corridor Specific Plan. Now, as per part of today's kind of discussion is just a brief introduction of the site and the existing conditions, some pre-applications and kind of related activities from private property owners that we received on this area, and then at least initial direction on some potential revisions to the specific plan. Now, I do want to note the Freeway Corridor Specific Plan itself was adopted in 2008, so prior to kind of the Great Recession really kicking through. However, as part of the specific plan, there were a number of overarching goals and planning objectives that were set forth, and so we're hoping to find a solution through this update process to better facilitate it. One is to maintain the impression of the rural community, ensure development provides, meets the needs of the residents and brings in tax revenue opportunities, and then that the land use design and density is economically viable for development. And as part of the objectives is one, to integrate the design, providing housing, employment opportunities, retail, parks, and other essential facilities for residents, expanding the range of housing. So as we've talked about with the housing element update, Freeway Corridor was kind of a key strategy for meeting both the affordable housing sites, but then also the market rate sites in the future, the hillside development requirements and open space provisions, and then certainly the development side of it, making sure that the financing and phasing of it makes sense to facilitate the development, working cooperatively through the different property owners to help make sure that the development happens timely, and then of course that sense of place and rural community is met as well. Now we'll have Sheila join us. This is actually a grant-funded project through several different grants through the Southern California Association of Governments, and so as part of the scope, they actually issued the RFP and then went through staff review as well as Caltrans reviewed and SCAD staff review. Placeworks was deemed the top-ranked firm for this, and so it's actually managed through the funding through SCAD, and so providing support as the city representative, and then SCAD staff is also supporting this effort as well. Welcome, Sheila.
Thank you. Sheila Cedarball, Senior Associate, Placeworks. Good evening, City Council members. This site really has great opportunity for the city, and we're just at the beginning stages right now, and I'm going to give a very brief overview, and then we're going to come back at a later date and give a full economic development report. So, because I'm sure a lot of your questions will revolve around that, and we don't have that completely ready for you today. So, this site is very large. This map shows ownership. The different colors are different families and other entities that own the site. It's on both sides of Interstate 10, right at the Live Oak Canyon interchange. So it measures 1,242 acres at the southern city border. It has an elevation change of 450 feet from the southeast corner over to the interchange. The two primary owners are the Robinson family, shown in blue, and the Palmer family, shown in pink. And we have conducted stakeholder interviews with both families. The Yucaipa Valley Water District owns 130 acres in the site. And there's a future I-10 interchange planned at Wildwood Canyon Road. And we heard earlier this evening that that is in a 3-year PAD process with Caltrans. So this map shows existing conditions as far as slope goes, and this does answer one of Councilman Duncan's questions about vineyards in this area. Vineyards need 15% or less slope, and all the colored areas on the map are areas with slopes over 15%. So the dark blue is slopes over 40%. So as you can see, there's quite a bit of topography on the map. And then this shows the FEMA 100-year floodplain areas. So all the blue areas are locations where residential would be difficult to locate, challenging. Then this is the existing land use plan, and this plan had a very high concentration of retail, and the market has changed quite a bit, both with the Great Recession and then since the pandemic. We know that there's going to be a very long-term negative impact on demand for big box retail. So that's one of the reasons that we need to really reconsider the uses of this plan. We have 2,447 residential units in the existing plan and 3,700,000 more or less square feet of commercial, regional commercial. And then business park uses are in very high demand right now, and this plan had 839,000. So we're considering increasing that amount of square footage. And the city has had some pre-submittal applications so far. There have been 2 of them. They're shown on this map. The Palmer parcel has an application for 2 large distribution centers. And then on the east side, the Ramos Chagola property also has a pre-application submittal. So this shows the first one, the Palmer plan. And there are 2 major buildings that would be distribution logistics uses for a total of just over 2 million square feet, and plus 29 acres of residential development. So Pacific Industrial is the potential developer of this site, and they sent some city benefits that could, these are just estimates of what they have seen with their existing logistics use buildings. They're saying it's approximately 678 new permanent jobs, $3 million a year in property taxes, $4,200,000 in permit fees, $1,240,000 in school fees, and they're planning to upgrade the Live Oak Canyon Road, which would benefit the Pumpkin Patch property, and then infrastructure improvements into the center of the specific plan area, which has been one of the major costs that has upheld development of this parcel. So we at PlaceWorks used a conservative estimate of 100 square feet annually in tax revenue, $100 per square foot of annual tax revenue. That would bring sales tax revenue to the city of $202,050,000. And we are in the process of verifying that number. We're looking at some comparable developments so that we can bring you some accurate numbers when we do the economic development report.
Does that seem high?
Yeah, it's very high. There's an extra 0 there, I think.
There's got to be an extra 0 there, yeah.
Okay.
But we'll confirm that.
Sorry. So this is, these are some business park, light industrial uses. And just some of the techniques, these buildings are very large, and some of the techniques we use to cut down on the massing, we make sure that they're well articulated. We're going to be writing design guidelines for this project, so a lot of these measures are going to be going to the design guidelines. We make sure the front entry is clearly defined, and there's variation in the roof line, and then extensive landscape screening so that, for the most part, the building would not be visible from I-10, the buildings. And the other application is the Ramos Chagala plan, and that's about 359,000 square feet. So there's, the access is from the south along County Line Road. And again, the conservative estimate, we will go back and look at those numbers.
I also want to point out that those are restricted by, in some cases, by current legislation and is being updated.
That's right. And that's
What?
what
What was
Steve
that?
Gunnels is researching that.
Those, I'm sorry, those are restricted today, some of those potential users by existing agreement, but there is new legislation that is being proposed that would adjust that.
Right, so we know that market demand has shifted, so we're looking at changing some of the uses and also taking uses away from the freeway and keeping the commercial uses a little closer to the 10 and moving the residential farther away. So again, we're including the Live Oak Canyon improvements. That's where the major site entry would be. And there's a reduction of the regional commercial areas. And from the stakeholder interviews that we've had, we've learned that it's best, that it's their preference to keep those uses closer to the I-10. And then we are increasing the business park designated uses, as has been indicated by market demand. And then the residential areas are moved a little farther away, especially over on the west side of the site. So one of the reasons we're redoing the, making revisions to the specific plan is because the hillside grading ordinance has changed quite a bit. There was a major revision since the time the specific plan was adopted. So we're making sure now that the specific plan is going to be in accordance with the hillside grading ordinance. One of the changes was that the slopes were changed from 10% to 15% when the open space is required. So it's requiring a little bit less calculation of open space. So that resulted in a reduction from 45% to 40% of the required open space. And what we would like to see is less of the open space in slope areas and more in neighborhoods where it can actually be used, because the existing plan didn't have really any park areas indicated. And then we would also like to change some of the housing designations so that it meets market demand a little bit more closely. We're thinking we would probably increase the density of the housing and add more categories like 12 units to the acre and possibly more of the 24 to the acre category as well. So again, we're working on the full economic development report, and I'm here to answer any questions. This is the end of the presentation.
I did want to add as well, as part of the open space discussions, to piggyback off Councilmember Duncan's perspective on the AVA, is allowing a little bit more flexibility in the hillside overlay, the open space areas for agriculture uses to perhaps be located there as well, as a way to pick up some additional vine spaces as part of that project too.
So could you clarify that consistency with hillside grading ordinance? First slope category revised from 10 to 15, resulting in reduction. And explain that to me, because I don't get that yet.
It is very complicated. It took me a while to understand it too. There's an Appendix B in the specific plan that gives a formula for calculating the open space, and it's based on the area within each slope category. I believe there are 5 categories. And the first category was originally 1 to 10%. Now it has been changed to be 1 to 15%.
And what does that do?
That results in a little bit less open space being required.
Okay.
Because the original calculation required 45% of the entire site to be an undisturbed open space.
I know the city has a table that maybe we could show.
Yeah, so as I guess kind of to step back a little bit further, the hillside overlay, those kind of requirements were modified as part of the 2016 general plan update. So one of the provisions that happened is, one, it no longer applied citywide, but then two, the categories that triggered open space requirements essentially got shifted up a little bit. And so that's kind of the provisions there. I can certainly pull up the development code to show that table as well.
Just at a later date, it's fine.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions for staff? David, do you have anything?
Not at this time.
Not yet? John, Justin, you're good? Awesome. So at this point, are you going to continue with the?
We are going to continue working on the plan, yes.
Okay. So at this point, you need direction in just moving forward with
I think just
the
more
reduction in the hillside overlay?
I think any direction or high-level thoughts that council may have that we should be mindful of as part of making those updates. Certainly, we've been reaching out to the different stakeholders and looking at that, but if there's any kind of words of wisdom that the council may have for the project, we are certainly happy to incorporate them and make sure that we're coloring within those lines.
I like what was presented so far. I like the fact that you're working on the business district being tucked behind and not being seen from Highway 10.
It is quite a long distance from Highway 10. We walked the site, and it will be seen from certain areas, but it will be screened to the fullest extent possible.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I can tell you from experience, and I've been trying to get Ken Robinson to do something with his property for 8.5 years. And that hillside ordinance is a major, major sticking point for him. He's dug in his heels. He will not do anything with that property as long as he's alive because he resents having to dedicate property to open space and give up his right to develop the property. That's a fact. The Palmers, with this warehouse project, have sort of tried to do a workaround, and I respect them for that. But the hillside ordinance that we have by the state standard of housing, I got to believe that if they knew exactly what we were doing here with this hillside ordinance, they would shut that down on some level because they don't want us to have any open space. And I don't want to take away our rural look, but along the freeway corridor, that's not Yucaipa. I'm sorry. You start with Yucaipa Boulevard, that's all developed all the way till you get to Live Oak Canyon, and then you've got rural from there on out. But you've got to get off the freeway and go 5 miles one direction to really get to Yucaipa. And so I've never considered that Yucaipa, although it is. And I think that that's the only place we have the opportunity to build a Bass Pro Shop or something like that.
All right, so at this point, you're looking for direction on us when it comes to the hillside ordinance. That's what I'm understanding, just so we're not
As Ben mentioned.
going in too many
Right.
different directions here.
Yeah, among any other things. But if you're looking for a little more flexibility and alternatives coming back to you for consistency with the hillside ordinance, that's an option that you may want to consider.
Okay. You have anything? You guys good with that? You good with
Yeah,
that?
I just want to make sure that we maintain that rural look. I don't want to subjugate our hillsides in favor of any type of development. You could go to Moreno Valley and along Malesandro, and I can't remember the streets that go north and south, used to be hillsides, and they have been raised, and it's now just flat land with commercial, and it's just ugly, and I don't want that to happen to us.
Here.
You good?
If we could just include on future discussions, anticipated traffic impacts, specifically as it relates to commercial traffic, workarounds for freeing up the commercial congestion in and around the Live Oak Canyon off-ramp. As it is now, that's a very rough interchange to navigate during certain times of the year. I can only see it getting worse if we add 18-wheelers through there.
Wildwood Canyon interchange.
Right.
That's
That doesn't mean that people aren't still gonna get off at Live Oak Canyon.
no, but that helps reduce the traffic congestion,
That,
especially the commercial traffic.
that's good. I think it's a good idea. I don't see the practical use yet. So if Place Works and city staff can please include that in your next presentation so you can convince me of it. I would like that.
Absolutely, we'd be happy to do that.
So are we good? Are we good at this point,
I
right?
think we are, thank you.
And I apologize, Sheila, for giving you a heart attack, making you
that's
wait
okay.
there the whole time. And then,
I'm here a lot
All right.
anyway, so.
all right. So moving on, that takes us to Announcements? Are there any announcements? Justin, you good? Bob?
Just the fact that we have a market night or a farmer's market every Friday at 4 o'clock now to 8, and we need to make sure we spend some money there because those vendors are not going to keep coming if they keep going home empty pockets.
All right. David?
Yeah, next council meeting, we're going to, as I'm be vacating my seat as chairman of the board of Omnitrans, and one of my last hurrahs is that I'm bringing our zero emissions bus as part of our world tour. We're gonna park it in front of the city hall, and I'd like to see everybody, our city council members, look at it. Maybe we get a big photo op. This
Are
is
you
the
going to
way
drive us around in it?
I can.
Okay, then I'm there.
I've got the Class 2 license. I can do that. But anyway, that's for 5 o'clock the next meeting.
Good to know. John, are you good? All right, so we do have a closed session.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. We've got a number of items on this evening's closed session. Most of them are conference with real property, or real property negotiator. That is going to be Mr. Casey on behalf of the city. The properties involved are properties at 32335 Live Oak Canyon, 32798 Oak Glen Road, 32019 Live Oak Canyon, and a portion of assessor's parcel number 0303-253-38. The negotiating parties are listed on the agenda. The final item is public employee performance evaluation for the city manager, and we do not expect reportable action on any of these items this evening.
All right, with that, we will adjourn this council meeting.